Steve,
You're
are
live.
we ready to go?
Ready to go.
Wonderful. It's 6:30 p.m. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the February work session of the Greenberg Central School District Board of Education. It's Tuesday, February 7th, and I'm now calling this meeting to order. Can I ask everyone to please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. First on our agenda is item B1, strategic plan discussion. You may recall at our last meeting, we had a draft of the strategic plan that was pretty detailed. We had a small subcommittee go through each area and try to flesh out some information. The rest of the board got a copy of that, had some time to look at it. And now we're going to go through step by step the draft. And board members can please chime in with any questions, comments, concerns, requests for change. So let's move forward. Dr. Iverson, I'm going to turn this over to you to go through step by step what you guys have so far, or anyone else on the committee that wants to kind of lead the discussion is fine by me.
Okay, thank you very much, Trustee Mears. So as we begin this process of going through the strategic plan, we will simply go through each goal area. We have 5 goals, strategic goals in our strategic plan, the first one being student success. That committee was led by Dr. Macaluso, and so he's here, as well as Lisa, Raymond, and I, to address any questions the board may have, and then we will follow through the 5 areas as they are printed.
Okay, do we want to go through the first strategic objective?
How would you like for us to do this? Just go through and just read what we have for each one, or
so
you just make comments, or tell me?
So for one, ensure all students will graduate as curious, collaborative, creative, critical thinkers and communicators with the skills to be lifelong learners with a pathway for contributing to our changing economy and rising workforce, POG.
Yes.
So the plan is to determine baseline student achievement levels, set yearly goals for improvement in core ELA and mathematics skills, and collect evidence on the most appropriate student achievement data sets to monitor progress in achieving these goals. And then we're talking about Fontes of Hanel, Bass, Colgat, iReady, New York State Ed, 3 to 8 ELA and math, region scores, IB scores, EOS student profiles, and the writing revolution. Triangulate academic and enrichment opportunities for all students. Develop curriculum maps to ensure IB transdisciplinary unit plans are fully implemented. Does anyone have any questions about that? There were some writing over to the right as well that talks about timelines, and it's a 5-year plan and talks about goals to achieve by each year. We also have a key at the bottom that has the draft updates. So I don't know if any trustees want to, maybe anyone on the committee want to elaborate on this section, or if anyone has any questions. Yes, Trustee Pineda?
Sure, so I'll just give an update here. So essentially, as you can see from the legend on the bottom, we've had at least 7 drafts of this plan. The subcommittee spent a lot of time on this with central administration, and we've gone through, and that's why you see all the different colors. Those are from different meetings, different ideas, different thought processes, and we ended up agreeing on what you see before you. So thank you for laying it out, President Mears, with the key action plans on the left-hand side, and then to the right-hand side are the 5-year plans with the specific metrics that are being targeted for each year. They tend to line up with the key action plans for the most part, but some of them are a little skewed on the paper. But in area strategic goal 1, student success, we really relied on central administration and a lot of their expertise to set these goals and these metrics. So a lot of this information is coming from what they believe is achievable.
I have a question. In reference to, if you look at each year, the first page, it says by June 2023, 60% of students will achieve annual, and we cross out typical growth. So I just want to be very transparent. There is a difference between growth and proficiency. So are we going to, as a district, only look at student growth? And then when we talk about growth, and I'm going to let you speak, Dr. Macaluso, when we look at F&P and when we look at the BAS, you know, already speaks to, and that's why the word typical is there, usually already speaks to typical growth, but I don't recall, because I do Fountains and Benel at my school, that it shows growth. That literally just shows what level like a student is on. So I don't know if that actually can relate to that. And it can't really relate to everything. It can relate to the state assessment, but when we have our state assessment posted on the New York State website, they basically speak about proficiency. So as a district, I just want to know if we should just have the one word growth there.
Trustee Washington, so this metric that we placed here was something that we thought about strategically, and you're correct, it is difference between growth and proficiency. And so what the group really wanted to try to capture here was meeting the student where they are and recognizing that research shows for us that 1 year of growth is something that would be reasonable for a student. So let's just say we had a fourth grader who came to us functioning proficiency-wise at a second grade level. We can reasonably believe that with the most effort with our teachers providing instruction to that student, that they can grow and be at the third grade level by the end of the year, but we recognize that that third grade growth as a fourth grader would not be proficiency. So we have some other pieces in here where we wanted to recognize that, and in particular, the metric above that, where we talk about the graduation rate, we felt that that would be the terminal proficiency, I guess, mark for our students, because this is in service of them becoming graduates and moving on beyond Greenberg Central. So that's kind of where our best thinking was with that. And then we also adjusted typical and replaced it with in alignment with the educational development, because we also wanted to recognize that we have students who have unique needs, IEP holders, English language learners, and while we're never using that as a piece that might restrict our efforts to help that child grow, we do need to recognize that sometimes those pieces give us a different piece of the puzzle that we have to look at. And so,
And I am all for growth, but when we start to put the strategic plan together, and then we have our state assessments, then we have our region scores, then we have our graduation rate, I just want to be transparent with our community, because I'm all about student growth. But when it comes down to the dime, everyone's really about proficiency. So I love the fact that we want to promote growth. But if we're going to promote growth and we're going to have it written, we have to really support all of our educators throughout the district to let them know that we are really going to focus on growth. Because we could put words down, but when it comes to the end of the year, the state assessment scores come in, people look at that data. So we just have to, if that's what we're going to promote, we have to be really serious about it before we put it down on paper. And that's just why I wanted to bring that to your attention, because I do believe it's about the whole child, but we just have to be real about what we're going to put down.
So is there a way to incorporate proficiency into this document? And I don't mean just you have to figure that out, Dr. Macaluso, that's for everyone. I mean, how can we capture, and you're right, Trustee Washington, the minimum state standards are to be proficient, so how do we address that?
sure, so there's a couple of ways that we attempted to acknowledge that, and certainly I want to recognize that, yes, we do want to also think about proficiency, which is why we listed it as one of the data sets that we would consider in that left-hand column. So we can look at that and we can think about that piece as well. But some of the other things that are happening that in the district that aren't necessarily reflected here that become part of our operational work is we are doing that professional development series with targeted leadership, where we have a very specific math achievement goal. It's a proficiency goal. And so that one, I don't quote me on this because I'm doing it off the cuff, but I believe it's 10% increase in
Right.
proficiency level
I
for
think
each
it
grade
was.
level. So we felt that that was a nice overlay with this because that piece is focusing on proficiency in a content area that we believed was a focus area, and then this would then be the part to support that with growth. But the feedback is certainly heard and recognized, and we can note that and look at it as a subcommittee as to where we might include that without.
Well, it's just so we could be
Understood.
authentic, right? It's just about being authentic. I don't mind. If we're going to be a district behind growth, we have to really be a district behind growth. So when people come and they say certain things, well, we're looking at the growth of our student, we're looking at our whole child. That's something that we have to promote, our brochures, who we are, our motto. So when people come at us and say, well, why do you only have one person or 1% of the 8th grade that can pass I think the math exam, then what are we going to say? Oh, well, we grew, now we have 2. Right, so what are we really going to say as a district? So I just want us to just be authentic with what we write down, and like I said, I'm all about growth, but let's truly be about growth. And then the last thing, develop curriculum maps to ensure IB. So if you could just let me know, Dr. Macaluso, in reference to our curriculum maps, because we had a presentation last meeting, and we found out as a board that the 6th grade only reads 1 novel in the general education ICT component. So do we have curriculum maps for the whole entire district outside of our IB? And do we have curriculum maps for our OUT program that we also are continuing to have?
So we have moved into the area where we have now started working on that. So there's a couple of moving parts with that. I want to acknowledge and remind the community that at one of the recent EWC committee meetings, that was something that came up with the curriculum map. So we have since, for lack of a better word, scrubbed the district website of curriculum maps that have been outdated. There are some that are still posted up there. And then we are in the process of working on that because one of the things that we recognized as we started to do this work with transdisciplinary IB units is that a vast majority of our teachers have not been IB trained. Right. So I had been giving in my updates that I believe we have, don't quote me on this, I think all of Lee F. Jackson staff have now been provided with the opportunity to have IB training. We have now moved on to Bailey. I believe we have a whole matrix of that. So we originally had a timeline to start working on these curriculum maps in March. However, we wanted to give the teachers and our leaders the professional development first. So all in all to say, this is a work in progress, and I want to acknowledge that for the community, that this is something that we're working on. And we did also take a look at the piece that was shared at the RJB showcase last board meeting and talk about ways that we can integrate novels into the other content areas, which is right in alignment with this. So not necessarily reading a novel in ELA per se, but reading a novel in social studies that connects to ELA, science, and so forth, and vice versa.
So should the key action plan be develop curriculum maps pre-K through 12 IB? Because
Forgive me
are
for
we
doing this on the
speaking,
cuff.
I just wanted to know, should we be specific? So we know that we're talking about our whole entire district, because for me, I was thinking when I saw IB, even though we are an IB district, a lot of times the emphasis is heavily weighed on our high school because of the diploma. So I just wanted to know, should that say pre-K to 12?
So while I would love to say pre-K, I want us to just recognize that our pre-K program is not a authorized program by IB.
Okay.
Right? So we infuse IB concepts into pre-K, but we are an authorized K-12 district for IB. And so that came up as one of our food for thought comments at a work session, and it looks like we were able to, we felt, incorporate that into strategic objective 4 under student success, where we have by June 2025, 100% of K-6, of all K-6 students will complete at least 3 IB transdisciplinary units. So we want to give ourselves some time up to 2025 to get those unit plans in place, and then K-6 students would have exposure to at least 3 by June 2025, and then by June 2027, at least 6 of them. So that's where we felt that work overlapped with that first strategic objective, and then we also had a goal under strategic objective 2, whereby we have a target of having 100% of all of our K-6 teachers complete IB professional development so that they can effectively implement those units of study.
That's great. Thank you so much for that information. And I just kind of want to know for that first page, key actions, should we just speak to the development of our whole entire district? That's what I was just kind of like, should we specify K to 12 because it is a development of the curriculum maps? Even though you have a 5-year plan on page 4.
It's not, we're not
Right?
paginated. Mhm.
I'm just still thinking that's the first page. And if we're doing anything as a district, even though we're going to build the capacity of our teachers, that we need to be building the capacity of our district. So the strategic plan is, you know, the district-wide plan. So I know you're going to, like you said, you had Lee F. Jackson already. So I know you're going to be developing curriculum maps for that. Then you're going to have Highview and then R.J. Bailey. And I'm just saying that we should reflect that, especially for our, this is my opinion, the only board member opinion, for key action, developing curriculum maps K through 12, even if it doesn't happen on the 4th year. But it's something that you're going to be doing.
Correct, noted.
So
And I think I just placed it a little bit differently, but heard.
So I want to make a point to that. As you're reading this document, something that will help us as we get through it, how to approach it. We were trying to stay true to the committees who were ahead of us. If you think back to phase 1, that big committee of 30 stakeholders who came up with the 5 focus areas, they were the ones who defined what these focus areas meant. So student success, since we're on that first area, you see they defined that definition. We commit to reach, challenge, and prepare every student for success in school and life. But then they broke it down, so the key pieces of every one of these phases when we go through it is to look at the success metrics. As we were going through this process and the way it was defined, success metrics are, if we do this well, if we accomplish everything in here, this is what we will deem as successful. So if you go back to student success and look at those success metrics that were identified by that initial committee, so when we got the document in subcommittees, we stayed true to the metrics, to the language they identified. So if you look at the language clearly, it does talk about growth in a year's time. It talks about pathways. That's why you see the language around IB in here, and you see college career readiness. Not to say the work we do is not going to, because we say every student in our overall objective, but when those committees started, subcommittees, when that committee handed it over, they had already defined for the district, and that committee had parents, community stakeholders, everyone who had a stake in this work, to say to us, as Greenberg parents, as residents, as community, we feel if we as a district do this well, more of our students will have this. So it may help you when you go through the rest of this document, when you see some of the narrowness, for lack of a word, and some of the specifics. They were specifically developed to connect back to those metrics that we were handed off to when we were divided. And so we didn't go back and change their language. We honored that process. We didn't change what they did. We made some changes, but we tried to stay as much as we could because we wanted to honor the work that was done along the way. We clearly could have made it our own, but we stayed true to it. So, Trustee Washington, when you see the specific language around IB and curriculum mapping, and as we go through more of these objectives in student success, which is our largest area, when we read this document, as the 3 of us continued to read it, we had to keep saying, but back to what they identified, this is how we will do it. And it helped us stay focused and then kind of go to the left and define over the 5 years metrics that will get us to the success metrics. If that helped you, it may help. I don't know if it does, but I hear your questions, but I want to make sure you know that, because you're going to see a lot more of that throughout. That is the way we read this document, and that is probably the way to read it. Would you agree, Dr. Macaluso, in terms of how the work was approached?
I can certainly speak for the student success subcommittee, which,
I mean,
right,
for your area.
correct. And assuming that that is the way, the process that all of the other committees worked on their thing. And the big piece, the big takeaway for this that I wanted to just illuminate for the community at large is, and one of the things that this committee really focused on was the PLG, which I just recognized is not actually spelled out, I think, anywhere in here. So we want to recognize that that's the portrait of a graduate. So we always presented the action plans with the lens of what do we want that child to know and be able to do when they exit Greenberg Central School District after their senior year. And so piggybacking off of what Dr. Iverson said, and those 3 items at the top, those were the items that we were given by the larger committee that was led by the consultant, Mr. McCormick.
And another point I'd like to make here, Trustee Washington, I agree with you with the words around growth. We felt that word does address the whole kid, because we know we want all our kids to ultimately knock it out of the park on these state tests. But we know in true transparency, realistically, every kid that comes to us is not at that level. So this was to honor where kids are and to move them there. And so a very rigorous goal we have for this year is that, as Dr. Macaluso said, in math, in that area of proficiency, we expect, and I think we're on that trajectory looking at this data, to increase proficiency by 10%, but we made a commitment that every child will move 1 growth. So if I'm reading on 3rd grade, I still may not be on level, but I won't be on that grade level next year. That is, and I think the research supports it, and I know the stakeholders, and I know this, the value and how states look at our proficiency and our money, and money is aligned with it. But being able to show in this district the power of every child not being where they were the year before is powerful. And that to make, so with that thought process, we knew we had that district goal already out there. So when we got into this, we did apply, I will say, Trustee Washington, we did apply that to this. We want to assure that wherever they are, that whole kid, doesn't matter if they're below level, doesn't matter if they're not reading, doesn't matter if they failed the test, they will not be where they are every year. So if that happens every year, child just continues to move, ultimately proficiency happens. So it's not going to be right like that. This, get it right away, it's not going to happen. Kids do not learn that way. We're not putting that pressure on our kids. We're not about just proficiency. We want that, but we are going to go deep and make sure they have the skill set to continually move. And I know then the gap closes. So we approached it differently, maybe. And we thought we want to honor our whole kids, what they bring to this room every day, the emotional, social, emotional concerns, just wherever they are, and make sure we differentiate, meet them where they are, and move them. And we saw that as being, so we took that out and kept growth. And you notice he said, and align it to their educational development, because that is, to just say we want 50%, 60% proficiency and forget about, well, the poor kids who may take 4 years to get there, they won't ever be in that percentage. And we will, as a district, continue to look as you described. But we'll be able to show, but they're not where they are. And for the body here, for our community, who sees that 50% and say, wow, why isn't it higher? Wait 1 second. We can show, though, every child moved. So we saw that as being very powerful, and we wanted to really go really deep into that. So, but clearly we will look at that, and I wrote a note here, is it a way that we can bring in more proficiency? And another point that I think I want to make, if you look trajectory across 5 years, you see we are increasing it. We are increasing the percentage we are 60 to 69 to 78 to 60, so and 100% by the 5th year. So that is the path how kids learn. They don't all get it this year. So we are on that trajectory. We will get there, going deep with the things in here. But I think I really wanted to take a minute to explain that, because we can't promise proficiency. We don't want to promise what we know we can't deliver either. This will deliver that success in 5 years.
So thank you for that. And like I said, yeah, I'm really supporting the growth.
I know.
But I want us as a district to truly support the growth. And I do believe that we can make proficiency. I do. I think, there's some things that we can do that really can support proficiency. And we do know that children do learn and in different ways. And I just wanted to say once again, all I was saying was, should we put K to 12 development of curriculum maps, just so we can hold ourselves accountable for what we're doing? Because if we just say curriculum maps, you can get one curriculum map in second grade and say, look, I met my goal, because it's not written down.
We made note.
So that was just a note.
Yeah, we made note. We'll go back.
Okay, I'm going to write my questions down because there's two more hands and I don't want to miss anybody. I don't know who had their hand up first, so I'll call on Trustee Warner first and then.
Okay, so
Okay.
definitely we need to leave the growth objective in place. The question is if we add an additional sentence about proficiency.
Yeah.
Now, we've got all the tools listed in the key action plans column here at the left, from which we would derive what the proficiency items would be, and it was my thinking that we might come up with an objective for a particular year based upon what our baseline is, but we can't lay out an exact percentage year by year because next year's goal will be dependent on this year's achievement. So I don't know if we need a generic sentence in here or if we need to be more specific. Okay,
I just feel like as board members, we still should hold our administration accountable for proficiency. I mean, we're the governing body, and we do want to support growth. But as a district, we do want proficiency. And we should not be scared to say that, along with supporting the whole child.
Trustee Valen?
And just in line, actually, with what Trustee Warner was saying, I think this is if you could clarify, this is a living document, and every year, I guess in the fall, we'd be looking at these goals and resetting or adding or modifying them based on the previous year's results. Is that correct? Is that how this process will work for
So
the next 5
normally
years?
the board reviews and comes up with board objectives, and that slightly may change a little bit depending on.
So then if we
What's
had a
happening,
generic thing that says we will have a process in which we will come up with a percentage of increase per year, that's your proficiency
Right.
goal.
So
Thank you.
So I'm not an educator, so I might be thinking about this incorrectly. Please correct me if I'm wrong. There is a difference between equity and equality. And so when we're talking about growth, that's great. But if student A is 2 years behind in PIC literacy, and we're saying that student A is going to grow 1 year every year, that student will never achieve proficiency, even at graduation, which was the terminal or the end result. So to me, real equity is to bring that 2 year behind student will need more interventions, more services, more programming than a 6-month behind student, correct?
Correct.
So that is actually equity. So what we're talking about with 1 year growth as a general broad stroke is really equality, which is great. We should offer equality. But we also have to look at the fact that we have some students that are much further behind than other students who are a little bit behind than other students who are ahead or on level. So my question is, how does this address that? And then I also had 2 other questions when you guys talked about IB training. I was wondering if all of our administrators IB trained? That was a question. You might not have the answer now. And then how is IB infused in our special education program? I know that we have students with disabilities. SWD, I think, is the acronym. I don't love disabilities because some students that may have a special education program are not disabled. But I don't know. I guess that's just a term that educators use. So I don't know if you have that information now about IB training, or you could get that to me, and then also how we think about equity versus equality and IB and special education.
So you're absolutely right. Equality is everyone gets the same thing across the board. There's no differentiation. We all take the juice, we measure the cups, you all get it. Equity is even within the equality, the kids in each cup are getting the differentiation that their needs met. So that the two work interdependently, they work together. So you're right, we have kids, say, year one, who are maybe behind, not on level, and the growth for them, it won't be equal. The growth for none of these kids will be equal. It will be equitable, because within each of those years, that they are getting what they need through the interventions, through the supports, to keep moving to the right, so that ultimately they all get here. Some will take longer to get here. To promise, we're promising that by, we're looking at 100% of the students will achieve annual growth, it says, by year 26, 27. So the equity is just assuring that what they get every year, where they all are, meets their needs, and even more, because, that's what equity is. So it's built with inequality in a way to try to describe it. It's within it that we do these different things for all the kids where they are, so that they all are eventually all on level. And that's when you have equality. It's abstract, but I don't know if that helped. Can you have anything else to add to that?
I just have the dates for the administrator training. It's March 7th and 8th.
So then all of our administration will be.
All administrators. Well, we have not invited the director of facilities to that professional development, although I think he might enjoy that. His time would be better used.
Yeah, we will.
Ms. Raymond is also joining as well.
She's excited about that. So proficiency, I did hear trustee Warner ask,
Yes.
is there a general line that we can put in here?
I made a note.
You did?
Mhm.
Okay.
We'll go back to look at that.
Drafting? Okay.
Annually determine a percentage of increase in proficiency in,
There it
and you'll have a grade level, and you'll have a grade level range, and probably math and ELA, or what, yeah.
Yeah, I made a note.
Thank you, trustee Warner. Okay. Page 2.
Oh, my God.
Trustee Warner?
I do have a question on this very same measure. I truly appreciate the idea of growth, because I do think all students are at different levels, and the key in their participation in school is that they're learning and moving forward. I don't understand myself how this is measured. Can you give me an idea of what a dashboard for this looks like? Because it's the way I read it, in alignment with their educational development, it applies to the individual student. How does that measure, what does that measure look like on a dashboard for our district as a whole? Just because I don't understand what that looks like, please.
So the examples that we listed, Fontisipanel, Bass, Colgate, iReady, those are a number of the exams that we offer in the district. So, and then supported by the action item below, triangulate academic academic and enrichment opportunities for all students. So what we had envisioned here is for student A, we would look at their data dashboard. Depending on which grade level they are in, some of those results might be available, some might not. We might not have, for a second grader, we might not have a 3 through 8 ELA or math score. So we would look at the various different pieces there and determine whether or not each of them has met their growth. iReady gives us a projected growth for student.
Can I redirect you? I
Sure.
get the individual. I'm wondering about the global. So when we report out to the community our progress, and that's what we're here to do, is to develop a dashboard of governance for a strategic plan that everyone here has worked a lot on developing. But what does, if we are saying growth is one of our objectives, what does that global measure look like for our district? How does?
So I think if I'm understanding your question correctly, so we would complete that process for all of the 1,600 students in our district using these variety of things, then you get yes, no, and then that would give us a percentage of the students who achieve their annual growth, if I'm understanding. Yep. Is that?
It does.
Okay.
I just couldn't visualize that. Thank you.
So I guess we're saying that our data warehouse that we have, and what's the name of it again?
EduClimber?
They have some type of measurement where it shows that child that started with this data in the beginning and now is at the mid-year, and it will give us, by the end of the year, their annual growth. So this company is able to do that for the district.
Right now, not all of these data sets are not yet imported in there, but we will have them eventually imported once we continue moving forward with this. We have some of them in there.
So
not all
that's
of them.
why I guess, right, so if we're looking at 2023 where we are now, how do we measure that? Because we don't have a system to give us that measurement for 2023.
Maybe I miscommunicated. We do have it. We're just in the process of uploading all those data sets into
So by
EduClimate.
June, we'll have it.
That's what this, yeah.
Okay, all right, perfect. So that makes a lot of sense.
But
And
maybe
then when we have that information, do we get presented with it?
Well, can I just make one correction? I don't know if we would have all of that by June because one of the data sets there is 3 through 8 ELA, so we tend to get those
In the summer.
a little bit later on, but as soon as we get them available, yes, certainly through the
Oh, we might have to
superintendent,
change
we'll
the
work
date.
on presenting that data to you
Okay.
and how we fared against this metric.
So should we change the date to like August or September? So we'll just be,
We can. I mean,
it's something to think about.
yeah,
We're not,
it's
yeah, we
something to
don't
think
want
about. It's a consideration.
The
Right.
dates in general.
Yeah, okay.
Anyone else with any questions on the first page?
Trustee Valen had her hand up.
You had your hand up, Trustee Valen?
No, Dr. M said what I was
Yes.
going to say.
Okay.
Trustee Thomas? I'm going to go page by page. Unless you want to skip pages, we can do that too. It's going to take a while. All right, next, identify and apply a collaboration rubric that can be used to assess participation in group work projects, provide associated professional development to leaders and faculty, implement use of the rubric to build relationship and collaboration skills, identify and apply a communication rubric that can be used to assess presentation skills and written communication in addition to formal course essays like college applications, business email, elevator pitches. Implement financial literacy, thank you, in class and curriculum in grades 6 through 12. Increase awareness for vocational programs focused on workforce readiness after graduation, like career and technical education. Increase special ed subgroup 4-year graduation rates, and create baseline data and use data to increase community. Keep going, okay. Thank you. Create baseline data and use data to increase community partnerships, internships such as WISE, CAS, Personal Project, Community Project, PYP exhibition, which is primary year program exhibition, at a rate of 10% per year. And then everything else cross out. Okay, any questions on page 2 into 3? Trustee Along? Okay, sorry, Trustee Along?
I just have a question on the, make sure I got this right, the second and the third bullet points. Do they apply to all students? Do they apply to a subset group of the students, or? Which part?
Identify and apply, those two
Yeah.
paragraphs?
The top two, identify and apply collaboration rubric to assess participation in group work projects associated with professional development to leaders, faculty, and implement use of rubric to build relationship and collaboration
Yeah, that's
skills.
for the staff.
So
Does that apply to all staff then? Right.
Or just certain grade levels, or?
Everyone?
All.
All.
And then the identify communication rubric, presentation skills, and
All.
written communication, that's everybody.
All students.
My question is financial literacy. Why are we starting at grade 6?
Yeah.
I mean, my son asks me to buy stuff all the time. At Highview, the school
And
store,
they
can I have
basically-
a dollar. I mean, you know.
They start financial
Yeah.
literacy at my school at kindergarten.
I mean, I'm sure you guys picked it for, is there any reason we can't do it younger?
There's a lot of literature that supports kindergarten, like the early years, so as you build up financial literacy.
So
as
if
they
you're
get into
teaching your
grade.
children to count change at very early grade levels, does that count as financial literacy at that level?
Well, that's part of the curriculum, but actually, there are books and different literature that's out there to teach them about how to spend money, about credit, and it's actually on their level, and about how to write checks and things like that, but on their level. So there's curriculum out there that supports kindergarten. And what's really great about this, if you support the students, you also support the parents. So it helps them also. So it's a very good question, Trustee Mears.
Does anybody object to removing the limitation and making it pre-K through 12? Going once? If you don't object,
my only point would be to ask the administration if they're able to achieve that or not, because this was designed, right?
To be attainable goals.
I did work specifically, I will yield to you.
Do you want to think about it and get back to it?
I've noted the recommendation.
Okay. All righty. Next, turning the page. Okay.
So, I mean,
Yes.
my question, it's on a later page, but it's going to color some of what's happening prior, so I'm going to ask now. Develop self-understanding that encourages and fosters independent and self-directed learning. It's under Strategic 5, Objective 5, where it talks about through the Advanced Learning Program and Extended Day Enrichment Programs, enrich and augment regular curriculum to meet the educational needs, identify participating needs of participating students. So when does that self-directed learning component kind of start? Is that infused in everything we're going to read until we get to that part? And or is that self-directed component only offered to people who are in the advanced learning program or extended day enrichment programs?
Great question.
Trustee Thomas, I'm sorry, I did reference page 6, but I wasn't sure
Page
exactly.
6, he's talking about the self-understanding and fostering independent and self-directed learning. Is that only going to be encouraged for the specific
The ALPS.
programs that's under Strategic Objective 5?
The way that it is presented here, we were targeting those groups at this point, yes.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a problem.
Yeah. Because,
Maybe everyone doesn't feel like
we
it's
just
a
need to
problem.
clarify
Trustee
something.
Pineda, yes.
So we had an extended conversation on this topic in the subcommittee, and just to correct my understanding here, if I'm not understanding properly, this is applying to ALP, but it is also applying to all children through the extended day enrichment programs. So if you look at the goals here, there is a line here that says, it's actually the black colored text. It says by June 2023, in column 2022 to 2023, it says by June 2023, 20% of students will participate in at least one extended day enrichment program. If you follow that line across, just the black text alone, you'll see that that percentage goes ramping up. And we had a very long conversation on this topic area, but the goal is that by 2026 or by June 2027, if I read that column, 100% of students will participate in at least one extended day enrichment program, which is targeting all students. So there's a ramp up for the extended day enrichment program that follows a different path than the ALP program.
oh, you wouldn't notice that from the reading, though.
I know, which is
Yeah.
why we spent a
need to
long
move it.
time on it at the subcommittee level, which is why I'm pointing it out, because it's not obvious. So that's why I just
We
want to
have to
raise
make
that
it
so that
obvious.
I mean, I guess I'll finish the thought.
Don't restrict to ALP.
I feel like, I mean, and obviously, you know, a lot of hard work has been done on this, and there's a lot of great things. I think that, you know, this is going to put the district in the right direction, you know, and it's important. But the self-directed learning component, in my humble opinion, is the thing that is helping certain districts to really, really get students to enjoy being in the building, and getting students to decide that you're not forcing me to do this. I'm doing this because I actually want to do this. And so everything that's going to happen with growth, everything that's going to happen with proficiency, it's going to happen because they get a bigger say in how they operate their learning.
Choice.
So this is something that everybody has to get some taste of. Like we can't wait 5 years for everybody to get because that there's just a bunch of students they're not going to grow. The proficiency is not going to go up. There's going to be problems in the school, Yeah, I guess we could talk about it more when we get to that space, but
No, let's
as we go through everything, that, in
Has to be
my opinion,
intrinsic
should be
motivation.
foundational,
Yeah.
fundamental to how we do all the other stuff.
So Trustee Thomas, I'll accept your argument and I'll raise you even more. I like this point that you're making. I'm glad you pulled us to that one section, because that, in my opinion, I would agree that that should be under all students, because when you're talking about curious, collaborative, creative, critical thinkers, communicators, you're talking about self-directed learning and independent learning. And I would even argue that perhaps advanced learners enjoy learning, traditional learning, right? Because that's why they're excelling in the traditional learning environment. And if we have non-traditional learners that are curious about other things, why couldn't that section be, or that statement be up in the front here as something where everyone's going to get that?
Agreed. Objective 1 is a good place to put that.
And this is just culturally responsive, sustaining education, right here on this page, that every student should have access to. Because once you really understand culturally responsive, sustaining education, students intrinsically want to learn, because you're providing mirrors and windows for them. They see themselves in their education. When we had our presentation last board meeting, we saw the ALP students engaging in debate, and my wondering was like, why are all students not engaging in debate? Why would that be something that only if I'm proficient, yes, my learning can extend to other, maybe project-based learning, maybe something else can be added because I am proficient, but all students should have access to creativity.
Trustee Valen?
I am not in disagreement with this. I just want to offer an alternative place to house this, develop self-understanding and foster independent and self-directed learning. That's Objective 4, which references research and show independence in learning. That might also be a place, if there's a conversation about moving it, maybe that's another option. That's all I wanted to say.
Strategic Objective 4?
Objective 4, yeah.
And I have a question for Dr. Macaluso, because I know you have a lot of work with culturally responsive, sustaining education. Do you see a need in the district that we need to actually have it embedded in our students' success?
Culturally relevant and sustaining education. I don't necessarily believe that we have to call it out if we are developing those transdisciplinary units of study well, because those become the opportunities for us to insert culturally responsive and sustaining practices where students, as you mentioned, mirrors and windows. So it's kind of like
The only reason why I state is because we know New York State has put a framework together, because we service the marginalized students. And if New York State thought that it was relevant enough to put a framework together, I'm wondering if we should just, start to think about it as a part of who we are as Greenberg Central School District.
So what I would just suggest initially, I'm sorry, go ahead.
So culturally responsive and sustaining education is deeply developed in this strategic plan. It may not be up in student success, but it is clearly a thread throughout. In a sense, I think it's more in premier workforce. If you go back to the phase 2 of the plan, in fact, think back, phase 1 had not embedded that framework. That committee did not. It came to the administration. At that point, we went back and we did adjust their proposal, and we embedded around this section, portrait of a graduate, in terms of defining what that student should look like who leaves us at the end of their 12th grade year, making sure along that path that we have embedded this culturally responsive, sustaining education that has principles around that framework from New York State, welcoming environment, inclusive strategies that address the underserved communities. all through this, that is in this plan. It's further behind. And when I get to that piece, I'll share with you why we put it there. But certainly in our practices in every facet of the organization, the culturally responsive framework is the guiding principle for how we will approach student success, how we're going to approach communication from that welcoming environment, to how we're going to build infrastructure around ensuring that our classrooms and our facilities meet the needs of our students and their learning in environments that are conducive to the environment, through technology, to how we hire people, and so that we have the very best in front of our students. So, Trustee Washington, maybe is your question, should we move it up here? Because
No.
I don't know, it is in here.
No, my question is, as a governing body, how do I make my administration accountable if I don't see it in writing?
Because, because in the back where it is, there are plenty of opportunities where they're going to be accountable through the training they're going to get around, because this is a level of exposure and raising the awareness. We aren't deeply embedded in that yet. We're rolling out this framework like many districts are, just now, rolling out this framework. We're not behind. Some districts are a little ahead.
Is this page 24?
Yes, I don't know where it is, but so how our people, our staff and administrators, even me, all of us will be accountable for it is through the steps we've outlined in that section through professional development. Through, I have several things listed there that we will engage everyone in, so that it starts showing up in student success. It shows up in every facet of the organization. So I don't know if that answers your question.
It does. I guess my thinking around the framework, it has the 4 principles, and the first one they start with is students. The second one they start with was teachers, then administration, and then parent and community. So if the student is the most important, I would just think it would live somewhere in student success. So that's all my point, because because if we're going through this and then we're having these conversations, and then I'm saying, well, how are we being culturally responsive with our students? And then you're like, well, let's go to page 24. But I want to know on page 1, so that's why I brought it up.
Yeah.
So if I may just quickly add something to the conversation that I think addresses the topic here and helps connect it. So I had mentioned the piece about IB curriculum maps, and there's a lot of different components of the IB curriculum maps, but one of the pieces that we'll be explicitly calling out when we develop these curriculum maps are the IB key concepts. And so these are the PYP key concepts. They change a little bit for MYP and DP. Communication, creativity, perspective, representation, identity, culture, and transformation, which was our thinking behind where we would weave in the culturally responsive and sustaining piece, because those key concepts do, in some way, shape, or form, align to the New York State. So I want to acknowledge that, yes, New York State does have that framework. We're also trying to, with this plan, create some cohesion for our staff so that IB is viewed as a natural process of teaching and learning. And that'll come over time, right? Because we have to have our teachers trained, our leaders trained, and so as that becomes part of it, those things will naturally be woven in. So we can, add a little piece to it, or, we can just...
Well, I would appreciate it because, I also have been IB trained, and IB training, the training that I went to did not speak to the cultural relevance of our students. It did not break down identity. It did not give training around how to be culturally sensitive. It did not help build the capacity of educators on how to even have a textbook that might have students of color, students speaking languages, and not just ignoring it, but actually embedding it into the lesson plans. So as you go to your IB training in 2023, there might be more connections to it. So I just know the training that I had a little while ago did not. So I just really feel that we need to make a commitment as a district to say that we are going to make sure that all of our students are culturally responsive. And we dig a little bit deeper than that shallow, where we have our assemblies and everyone dresses up and we have posters. That's the shallow culture. But when we get deep to the point of really understanding each other and understanding why I might not I might not want to be in a room with certain people, or why looking at me, I'm not allowed to do that because of where I'm from. Those are the things that get a little bit deeper and really bring those gaps and makes bridges so that we can really respect each other. And we talked about it at a meeting before. Trustee Julie had brought it up. I don't know if it was at our retreat, but how we really helping our students understand empathy, understanding how to respect each other's differences and appreciate each other and not hurt each other because we are different. How are we really digging into those conversations? So that's why I just thought it should be somewhere in student success. You know, you can go back and find out where it should be embedded, but I know as a governing body, I want to be able to say, well, this is our plan. So Superintendent Iverson, like, what's happening? And then she could say, well, let me explain what we're doing. We're training the teachers, we're doing this, but it's all about the students in the end.
So can I address that? Because I see students as the ultimate. We don't get to students if we don't have our systems and structures in place. So we purposely put that framework in Premier Workforce in the back. It just happened to be number 5. It could have been number 1, and it had been up front, but it happened to be the 5th area. Because the framework is not just about student success. That culturally responsive, sustaining education is not just about, it's about a lens of which districts look at their practices, their systems, and their structures and resources that support student success. So we saw it as part of the workforce. That's why we put it here. We saw it as part of, we have to work on that piece, build capacity of our staff. We have to look at some of our structures that inadvertently keep kids out of these programs. That's what EOS is doing. We have to look at some of the resources, how we've aligned our money. It didn't fit in student success there. The framework around that culturally responsive education creates student success when those things are in place. That's how we interpreted it. So we put it in the back. I get that is in the back, but it clearly says, you know, that it's going to be grounded in that, so that when these things are solid and when we have these things in place, ultimately student success does happen. But it won't happen until the adults in our system are aware of it, until the consciousness has been raised, as you said, Trustee Washington Brown, how those strategies should look. We just can't say, okay, go, teach, be culturally relevant, be culturally responsive, remember it's sustained education to our body, and say, and without them having some support of how to do it. So we put it in the workforce area because that's the building we got to do, or we must do, to get our bodies, get everyone in this organization, exposed, taught public professional development through all kinds of activities, because when it's here and we do this well, we know it's going to show up here. To put it here, we felt was too limited. It was saying this framework only means student success. We all here for that reason. But the framework is broader than that. It is connected to how organizations should have in their environment principles that will help kids get there. It is not a student success framework. So we left it there. I get when you look at this, it's not here. But I think the place, I don't know if the place is relevant where it is, as it is more important that we have it here, and we're saying we're going to be doing it, but this is about how we're going to make sure the adults in the system. We can certainly look at that, Trustee Washington. I think your point is well taken, but I just want to make sure with the time we spent on this and how we've lived this document to be able to explain our thought process. We put a lot of thought into whether we should move it. And I purposely put it here when I got to thinking about it, reading about it, it connected more to the workforce of the organization doing this work to assure that students get it. And so we left it here for that reason.
And I definitely
You can see my connection. Okay.
definitely understand your reasoning. And as I'm just going to stop because I know Trustee Thomas is going to be, how long are we going to be here? But when we are developing curriculum,
Yes.
CRSC.
Yeah.
I just can't,
Okay. so
right, as you're
Warner.
building, you know. So
We
that's
could-
it. I'm going to stop talking now.
We could very
No,
easily
great questions.
have a reference, okay, in which we say, because we're under the objective number 4, develop internationally minded people who recognize their common humanity and shared guardianship of the planet, help create a better and more peaceful world. You have to recognize all those differences or you'll never get past it, right? So it does fit there. So you've got the bulk of the material back on page 24, so just put one sentence in here and then reference page 24.
Thank you, Trustee Warner.
Make a reference, okay.
Yes, and I think that what's important is, at least in the past, these things have gone on our website. It's been clear to the public looking at it, and if it's only in one particular subset area, it can easily, get overlooked if it's only in one place.
And I think, President Mayers, if the board members would actually look up the New York State CRSE framework for themselves, they will see where a lot of this information lies. And the first thing is about the students. So it just, to educate ourselves also as board members.
Okay, Trustee Valen?
I won't delay this much longer. I just want to say we could also, so my understanding again of the process is the board is going through it now. It will then later be consolidated and either we'll meet again or present it to the public. And when it's presented to the public and eventually published, there's going to be like a preamble that discusses the portrait of a graduate and our mission, our vision, our values. And maybe in that preamble, we could also discuss how the CRSE framework is kind of embedded throughout. So maybe that's a good place to have that kind of understanding.
Good. Thank you. Okay, it's 7:30. I don't know if we want to try to hit Objective 2 really quickly. Strategic Objective 2, assist learners to use creativity and sensibility in day-to-day life situations, enable learners to achieve a balanced growth as a social being in tune with culturally responsive behaviors. This is still part of student success. Goal 1 is just Strategic Objective 2. Under that objective, develop learning frameworks that allow students to explore creativity in relevant, interesting, worthwhile, and interdisciplinary ways while communicating learning in written form where appropriate. Value creativity through celebration. Teach creativity skills. Remove constraints for creativity and give space for creative work. Implement process, not product, approach to the assessment of creativity through rubric. Any questions on that section? Trustee Along?
Just one. What does remove constraints for creativity and give space for creative work? What does that mean?
Is that in your area?
That refers back to a conversation we had just a couple of minutes ago regarding project-based assessment, open-ended types of questions, that we're not just doing, multiple choice tests, quizzes, things of this nature. That's just one version of it. Another way that gets manifested in the classroom is through our ability to question students and listen to responses and have students not only respond to the teacher but respond to each other, ask questions of each other. So that is, those are all the pieces that we intended in that area.
I guess the word constraint, that's what constraints are on our children now that we need to remove them? What systems are in place that our kids can't be creative now? So that's what I guess my question is. Is that the right word? Because it sounds pretty oppressive.
Okay, so.
Oh, I said what constraints are on our children now that we need to remove them?
Remove constraints, like what's restraining?
I mean, some of the constraints might be what he spoke to in terms of if the only way you're given the instruction is multiple choice or where you have to write it, some people their creativity doesn't operate that way. But if you give it to them where they can tell a story about it out loud, then it does. So does it sound like we're right now that doesn't necessarily always happen, but we're going to move towards that happening?
That is correct.
And it also just means increasing more opportunities for it.
Yeah, I just didn't like the word constraint. Maybe
we could change that word.
I just didn't like the
Circle didn't
constraint.
put a word. Circle didn't put a word.
Yeah, different word.
Circle word and put word choice
Okay,
next to it.
thank you. He circled it. Okay, Trustee Valen?
Yeah.
It does.
So, here's a suggestion: promote creativity, blah, blah, blah.
Promote.
I like that. It's more positive.
But-
That's right.
But
Fine.
from the description you're giving, I'm wondering, do we need to actually call out like universal design for learning as far as being more prevalent?
So that goes back to my previous comment about really having our faculty focus on IB. I don't want to sound like a broken record with that, but we are an authorized district, and I think putting that framework around people's brains and then placing, so universal design for learning, it tells us exactly that.
Right.
Multiple ways of representation, expression, and if we get to that, not if, when we get to that point where all of our staff are trained and we have these interdisciplinary or transdisciplinary units of study, those pieces should happen. So a child should be able to show that they know through creating a Flipgrid video, through writing a script for a play or something like that, in addition to a multiple choice exam, because we have to kind of think about that in mind. You know, we had a conversation a little bit earlier on about student choice, and we also have to monitor that, because the reality of it is a student who is able to express themselves well in project-based form does need to be pushed to their fringe and also be able to express it in a multiple choice test, because the reality of it is that's our world, right? Same thing with a child who is maybe 2 or 3 grade levels below. We can't always allow them to have choice, because then they would always go to the dramatic play center and not focus on phonics instruction. So I just want to make sure that we're cognizant of that piece, and you know, that was, if we have not captured it, then I'm sure it'll come out in this discussion, but I do want to make sure that we keep sight of that as well. So yes, we would have that. We can weave it in, universal design for learning. I'll note it and think about where we can make it so that it is a seamless process for our faculty, and not, you know, we have IB, we have universal design for learning, we have this, we have CRSE, and again, I'm not excusing that.
UDL is CRSE.
Right. None of it's mutually exclusive. It's
They're
all
not.
supporting.
Right.
And the
The
district
education,
was
different
trained in
methods.
UDL. I mean, we do have new people, but the district was trained in UDL a couple of years ago
Yep.
before the pandemic.
Thank you.
Okay, we could try to really quickly go through 3, too. Okay, I'll say 3 is ensure a comprehensive and innovative early childhood program that meets the diverse needs of our student population. Under that, it's introduce and apply research-based early childhood learning and development framework, develop and implement parent community workshops to increase understanding of how early childhood growth can be strengthened at home, continue refinement of the ECP professional learning community structure, that's PLC structure, strengthen articulation planning between ECP and Lee F. Jackson, collect data on retention into kindergarten. Is there any questions, concerns, comments? The only comment I would have is the develop and implement parent community workshops. I feel like they have those, but maybe not. Maybe they're not happening now, but I feel like Head Start, yeah, I think they actually require, I'm going to mess up if it's Head Start or pre-K. I think they do require some parent community engagement stuff, but I guess this would formalize it. Is that what we're trying to do? Actually get it, like, formalized that it's happening at a certain intervals? Or as a district ECP?
So the idea that we had behind that was actually dipping in a little bit earlier if we could, and helping our parents to see what are the things that they can do pre-ECP, pre-K, to help their
Okay.
children at home. Something along the lines of the research out of Boston Basics, sing and play, count, things of that nature.
Okay. Sounds good. Great, we went through that one.
Yeah, which we felt would contribute to that top goal of fewer students demonstrating that they had a delay using the Dial 4 when they enter us in September.
All righty. And objective number 4, strategic goal 1, wait a minute, how did we get back, to 5, I'm sorry, my eyes are playing games on me. I don't have my glasses with me. Develop internationally minded people who, recognizing their common humanity and shared guardianship of the planet, help to create a better and more peaceful world and research and show independence in learning. Increase class offerings in IB to allow access for IB for all in both SL and HL. And someone asked about that. Did you get your answer on that? So with IB, there's a whole bunch of acronyms that, you know, we learn over time. So increase class offerings in interbaccalaureate diploma program, I'm going to ask you to specify that, to allow, or not just diploma program, but on the second level, which is, the diploma program, which is the second level, the final level, to allow access to international baccalaureate for all, both standard level and higher level classes, which is standard level are 1 year courses and higher level are 2 full year courses. And in order to get the diploma in the diploma program, you would have to have, Chris, catch me if I'm wrong on this one, 3 HL courses and 2 SL courses, right? Or something like that. So, 2, 3, yes. So that's why the differentiation, I guess, is important. Next, provide opportunity for dual enrollment in international baccalaureate and advanced placement classes in English language classes and history where appropriate. Increase IB coursework opportunities for all student groups. Increase enrollment in all higher level classes, including increasing students in the diploma program cadre. I put culturally responsive and sustaining CRSE in this section for some reason. I don't know now because I'm confused because I'm reading. Does anyone have any questions about this? Yes, Trustee Valley.
I'm just going to correct a few things. Sorry.
It's okay.
But first of all, the diploma program requires 3 and 3, 3 higher level and 3 standard
Thank
level.
you.
And this increased class offerings, I actually believe it's correct as is. It's not referencing the diploma program per se. The idea of IB for all is that anyone could access those classes, not just those in the diploma program. So I think the wording should remain as is.
Thank you for that. I need clarification because I thought the diploma, so there's a primary year program, there's middle years program, and there's diploma program, correct? Unless there's another level, name for that level. Unless and I don't have my computer to look up in the IBO, but there's an IBO webpage you can.
That is correct. There's PYP, MYP, and DP.
And DP. So diploma program, when we talk about diploma program, we're talking about, as you said, the actual diploma. Right, but I'm talking about diploma program 10th through 12th grade. That's why I was saying to specify that, because that's what you mean here, right? Increased class offerings.
The diploma program is reserved for 11th and 12th.
11th and 12th, sorry, but that's what you're talking about here. That's why I said DP, because I'm not talking about the diploma itself. I'm talking about the program, which is the 11th and 12th grade program. Right? It's PYP, NYP, and DP, correct?
Correct.
Okay. So I'm talking about DP, not the diploma. The program.
Okay.
Does that make sense? Yes. Trustee Pineda.
It makes sense, but it makes sense to us that know exactly the minutia of this. It's not going to make sense to the community. So when we were talking about it, we kind of left that off on purpose because we wanted to make sure that it was clear to everyone that a student in 11th and 12th grade would have the ability to take IB classes, and we would encourage that and hopefully meet these metrics over time. So that's why we didn't put DP in there. We didn't want the community that's not familiar with all the acronyms and terms and all that to think it's just for the students that are actually attempting to pursue that diploma.
So how can we specify this so that we say offerings in IB and someone doesn't take that? You're right, but the community doesn't take that as when my kid's in 4th grade and they get IB, what does that mean, increase the offerings? When you're talking about increase the offerings, you're talking about the IB classes, and my quote, IB classes in 11th and 12th grade, right?
Correct.
That's what you guys are talking about. So how do you specify
You want to say
that?
11 and 12?
Yeah, say 11th and 12th is fine. I don't care if it's that.
So if I could just, before we do that, call out the metric. So in the metric, we did specify that 11th and 12th graders will successfully complete a.
So do we want to maybe just put a pin here so that when we write it up for the public display of this, that it's clear what that means by IB core? Because somebody, Trustee Vallon, somebody said this earlier when we were talking about IB, maybe Trustee Washington, to say, make it clear that we're talking about the full IB from, when we talked about pre-K and there's no pre-K, IB is a full program from K through 12. When you're saying offerings, that can be confusing to someone, that's all. All right, think about it. You put you circled it. Okay, let's keep
Increase
going.
11th and 12th
It's now
grade class
7,
offerings.
4,
Increase 11th and 12th grade class offerings in IB to allow access to IB for
Okay.
all, both SLA and HL.
All right. So if it's there, you're fine with it.
I'm fine with it.
All right. So section 5, should we go? We have section 5 and 6, and then we're done with this one goal.
One area.
One area. Okay. Strategic objective 5, through the advanced learning program and extended day enrichment programs, enrich and augment the regular curriculum to meet the education needs of participating students. So we have ongoing monitoring of the ALP selection process and pathways for students who do not qualify or who qualify and may not persist. Increase opportunities for advanced education in all 5 domains. A, intellectual, cognitive, B, academic, C, creative, imagination, alternative thinking, D, artistic, self-expression, detail-oriented, E, leadership, judgment, confidence. Provide for cognitive development in core curriculum areas at an appropriate pace and depth. I'm going to skip the one section we're going to move. Develop intellectual and scholarly skills and attitude. Roll out of enrichment extended day program, STEAM. Promote critical, creative, and divergent thinking skills. Develop research skills and methods. Foster intellectual inquiry at all levels. Develop aesthetic knowledge, skills, and appreciation. Any questions, concerns? Trustee Washington.
How do we measure our ALP program?
Dr. Macaluso? She was asking, how do we measure our ALP program?
Do we put
I
in-
heard
Oh.
I'm sorry, no, I apologize. I just wanted to acknowledge that I did hear the question.
Oh.
Right now, we're looking at the students who persist in the program.
Okay, any other questions? I'm just going to say I don't agree at all with this objective. I don't think we should have an objective for a subset of kids. Do we have an objective for English as a new language for student success? Do we have an objective
Special
for
education.
special education? Do we have an objective for any group of students? No, we do not, and I don't think it's right to have a specific objective only for a certain group of kids, but I may be in a minority on that. Trustee Pineda?
I'll just go back to what we said earlier. While it may be called ALP, it's not just ALP, it's also Extended Aid Enrichment Program, and we did spend a lot of time on this at the subcommittee level, and maybe I have the understanding of it because we spent so much time talking through it, but it really is designed to not only impact ALP, but also impact via the Extended Day Enrichment Program all the students in the district. So you see those metrics don't call out specific grade levels. They call out 100% of students by June 2027. So if we need to tweak the verbiage so that that's more clear, we should. But the point is, the intent here is not just singly identifying the ALP program. That's one component. The other component is the Extended Day Enrichment Program, which is targeted to all.
Well,
Yeah, I would prefer a change in the language for sure. I mean, just looking at ongoing monitoring of the ALP selection process and creating a specific procedure for that underneath the objective, to me, is a little too selective. I think we should be looking at all programs. So when it comes to the ALP program, that's fine. But when it comes to any RTI program, that's fine. When it comes to any enrichment program, all programs, we should be doing ongoing monitoring of the selection of that. So it just concerns me. That's all. I had an ALP kid, so I'm not, I could fight for ALP, I can fight against ALP, but I think that we just have to imagine if none of us are here, and someone new popping in, looking at this document, how are they possibly interpreting it? And so it just has to be something that is going to be fair, even if we're not here to fully explain all of the discussion around it.
it's
Trustee
called
Werner?
equity.
Just flip it. You go to the top level objective and list extended day enrichment programs first, and then ALP second. And then there'll be a lot less misreading.
Trustee Vallens? Okay, so anyone else?
I just, Why do we need a goal for extended day? Like, why do we need a goal for that? Like, what was the thinking behind that?
I could answer that, but I'll let the administration go first.
Oh, okay.
So I don't have the documents in front of me from the very, very first iteration of the community feedback, but I know that that's something that we've received some feedback on regarding our extended day programming. And so we believe that it was important to include this here, especially as we think about the students who we talked about earlier on that are maybe multiple grade levels behind. When you think about interventions being put in place for those students to meet their proficiency, there's just but so much time in the day. So we believe that for all students to be able to experience something that is a little bit different and unique from, for lack of a better description, traditional instruction during the day, that we would provide some opportunities for them to have some different kinds of experiences through extended day, but then also build back some of the STEAM initiatives that have been in place in the district, I think, in the past and were desired to bring back. And so that's something that we've been working on, and we believed it was something that would be useful to measure.
All right, Trustee Thomas?
So, I mean, what stops us, what's the practical thing that stops us from being able to look at all of these things that are associated with after school, like the extended time, as well as the out program? What stops us from offering those things to everybody? Like I understand some people are behind, but some of the like all of these things are obviously parts that they need, and I feel like would still help the academic and actual like the test scores and things to that effect.
I think when we look at the students and we just purely look at minutes in the day, while it is always our hope, dreams, and desires to have the students experience all of these things in this section, in reality, if a child needs interventions, that takes up time in their day. If a child is, for some reason or another, identified as needing some additional language supports, that pulls them from their classroom, their requirements, right? We have to meet certain requirements by state education department. Some students who have limited English proficiency must be pulled out in small group instruction to receive some scaffolding. And so when you look at a schedule, even when we maximize time on task and instructional time, there's just, it limits, there are limits to that. And so sometimes we have to think about ways of doing that, not instead of during the day, but in addition to, so that children can experience it in a variety of different ways. Because we even know that at the high school setting, some students end up taking courses during their lunch, so to speak. When they grab their lunch, they come and they go take a course. And so even for that student right there, their offerings during the day is limited. So we have to be able to provide it through other alternatives.
So what would it take? If we had double the teachers, and I know that that's not something that's realistic, what's making it so that everybody does not be able to get access to it? What more would be needed?
Time in the day, time in the instructional day.
So it would be like people to provide the time.
Which is, and that's how we would address it. A longer day, a longer school day.
Got it.
A longer school day. Which ultimately becomes a financial impact, right? Because if you're going to ask members of the teaching faculty to stay longer, well, then we would certainly need to look at what their workday is.
And Ms. Raymond had a reaction when you said she looked up. Trustee Along.
Thank you for that explanation. That was very helpful. I have one question about the measure, the goal for the extended day for 26-27. 100% of students will participate. Is that a realistic number?
No.
Should that change? 100%
Yeah.
of students in an extended day enrichment
If we don't know
program?
people's lives, like that might.
I think that's doable. Because it's saying, are you speaking, Trustee Yolanda, where it says by June 2027, 100% of students will participate in at least that one?
Yes.
Is that not addressing what you are saying you want why can't all kids have access to it?
So if everybody stays after school, they can.
So then 100% will have access to, but participation is a different question.
Right.
Yeah.
We're not just giving them access, they're in it.
So-
Does
Well-
that address?
Yeah, Trustee Valen?
I hear and agree with Trustee Along's concern. Another option could be 100% of interested students, or 100% of students will have access to. There's some ways, because 100% of all student subgroups, let's just say, well, no, I'm not going to do my children. I will be in trouble. Right, they might not have the ability or the interest to participate in an after-school program. So I think there's a couple ways we can massage that if we don't want to change the percentage.
We'll change the verb.
Right. Okay, Trustee Pineda?
I will be the sole dissenting voice on this one then. My thought process is the intention behind this is to have all students participate in at least one program. That doesn't mean the program is given Monday to Friday. It could be on a Monday, it could be on a Tuesday, depending what the program may be, right? The goal here is to push out students and give them the opportunity to have different models of learning, creativity, to let them experiment, right? That's what we're trying to do besides the regular day-to-day education and reading, writing, and arithmetics and everything else we do. It's really to push them, and in that process of them being pushed, they're learning, I can do this, and they're growing. So if we take this metric now and we say, you know what, let's make it to, we're going to offer it, well, that kind of diminishes, in my opinion, our students' abilities. And what we're trying to do, what we're talking about here since 6:30, essentially is let's push them so that they can see and they can grow and they can really be confident in their abilities when they leave us. That's the point. So I will be the sole dissenting voice that says I would love to leave it at 100% of students will participate. Obviously, there's things that can be done. It could be a Monday thing. The way I see it is, if the students are interested in the programs, they will find a way to at least be in one. That's just me, though.
You're not gonna be the sole dissenting, because I'm gonna agree with that. I do think it's probably socially and emotionally healthy to have the kids spend more time, whether it's one program or not, one day, even during school, if they have to work after school or do something else, but to spend time socializing and engaging with other students, with staff, sure, that makes sense to me. But maybe the way it's written can be a little, I don't know if that's part of the issue. You guys have heard the feedback. Take it and discuss and maybe come back to us either with the explanation or with something a little different. Trustee Along?
I'm going to retract my question. After Trustee Pineda's explanation, I think 100%, and it doesn't say a time frame. It doesn't say it could be annually. It could be in that year. Well, it is in that year. It's 26, 27. So it's a stretch goal. I retract my question.
Okay, any other questions, comments,
Leave
concerns?
it. Yeah, agreed, leave it.
Okay, any other questions, comments, concerns? No? Strategic Objective 6, and then we're totally done. Awesome. Sorry? Yes, with SG1, with the goal.
Student success, right? We're
I'm sorry.
totally done with student
No, wait a
success.
minute. Wait a minute. For weeks now, this group has said this is the largest goal. We spent the most time. We had the most hours. So I was excited to get to. I'm sorry, not the whole document. We're just done with strategic goal number 1. Okay. Sorry about that. Through SEL, social emotional learning, we'll ensure children and adults acquire knowledge and skills that impact their ability to manage emotions, manage behaviors, and set and achieve goals. Leverage the work of the district social emotional steering committee to execute the deliverables of that group's work while using a continuous improvement cycle to monitor and identify student needs. Develop and implement the social emotional learning curriculum in all district schools. Research opportunities to maximize instructional time to include delivery of social emotional learning services such as homeroom periods, co-curricular, extracurricular clubs. Collect relevant data to monitor and refine the work of the district social emotional steering committee, revise curriculum as needed, and implement revisions, and continue to collect relevant data to inform the process. Any questions, comments, concerns?
What data? What are we using?
What data?
We would be using some sort of a climate survey. We partner currently with a research organization that provides us with some surveys, so we would either use something that they already have available. We actually used a version of it last year and tailored it for some specific needs. Dr. Iverson is looking into using it as well for some student advocacy work as well, so we would use one of their surveys.
So is this saying that we're having homeroom periods in September 23, 24?
And we'll have a SEL diagnostic?
We would do a pre and a post. So students would take the inventory at the beginning of the year and then again at the end of the year. And that would be our
rollout
gauge to see if they can self-report competencies.
And
So-
the homeroom?
I'm sorry?
The homeroom?
Homeroom, you said?
Homeroom? Those are just examples.
So how do you baseline 2023?
Good question.
Do we, can we have the name of the diagnostic in the plan?
I would just caution us to not do that because right now we are currently contracting with the vendor that provides it to us. We might change that, but we can think about ways to calling that out. I mean, specifically, I just would caution us to using something that's proprietary to a vendor that we're using right now.
So we're not, we're
Use
going to
climate
continue to
survey.
use the vendor for this year. So,
We would like to continue using the vendor next year as well. You know,
Okay.
and things could change, you know, a few years later down.
So so we don't have homerooms in middle high school? Are you saying or you guys, the thought process, the group, you talked about this, is the idea that we're going back to homeroom periods where we're going to deliver or have opportunities to deliver social emotional learning? Is that what?
It wasn't necessarily calling out that we would be adding homerooms. It was just an illustration to think about ways that we might be able to embed.
Yeah, I'm not trying to hold your, if you want to think about it more, think about it, come back.
It was just never, it was not a thought or piece.
Okay.
It was just examples.
Okay. Trustee Long.
I have a question about the measures again. The percentage of students, is that the percentage of students, is that the entire student body?
Similar to your question that you previously asked about the growth, we would do the same thing. So we would have each student take the inventory, and if the child did meet, then that would be a yes. If a child didn't meet, that would be a no, and then we would turn it into a percentage. So 1,500 out of 1,600 students were able to do this, so then that would give us a percent.
Okay, so not a percent of response rate, a response of total.
Percent of students.
All right, then this may be understanding, but when we say 100% of students by 2027 will self-report SEL competencies that meet or exceed nationally normed standards, what does that mean?
So, assuming that we would use the survey that we currently would thinking of using from the research organization, we would then baseline our students in comparison to the national norms because they use this tool in other states, and then we would determine whether or not our students have met or exceeded that standard. So if the standard is that a student will report, I'm just giving an example, having not looked at the inventory, right prior to coming to you. So let's just say the national standard is that a kindergartner will be able to identify 2 strategies for coping with such and such. And if our students can express 3, then they would have met or exceeded the national norm. And that's just an example. I mean, the national norms would change depending on what the population size is that receives that inventory.
Okay. No one's saying anything, so we're gonna stop. 8:05. It took us an hour and a half. We are. Would you like to go on, Trustee Valen?
Well, can you just clarify for me the process? Are we going to take a meeting and finish this by June, or what's, just outline for me the next steps,
So again,
please.
you guys have highly stressed to me that this first goal, that was full 8 pages of printout, was so, long, and it did take an hour and a half to go through. I was thinking the next meeting, we would probably get through the next ones quickly, but you tell me what you want to do, because time is a-ticking. A couple of people have asked me when the rollout is. And it is taking time, the longer it takes us to now get through this. Now we got it out of the committee. This is the first time the board has actually talked about it as a group. So what do you guys, what is your pleasure? I'm open to suggestions.
I suggest we continue at the next meeting.
I agree, that's why I thought that process, but I want to make sure everyone's okay with that. I don't want to unilaterally make that decision. Okay, so we're going to move on now to policy review, and we have 4 policies attached here. 5, excuse me. 1, 2, 3. Am I counting? No, I'm not. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 6 policies that were attached here. The Governance and Policy Committee has looked at these policies. We're now bringing them to the full board for review. What will happen after that is that the policies will be available out for the public at our next meeting, and they will be out for 30 days, and then we'll come back and vote on those policies. So does anyone have any questions, comments, concerns about the policies? Trustee Valen?
Yes. Looking at policy 3110, I did have a question and/or suggestion. Does the board have printouts of these, or no, we do not. So no one can see what I'm going to be looking at. Okay.
I can look on my
so
phone.
number 1, in the future, when we do policy reviews, if we could have copies at our desks, or spaces.
3110.
Secondly, I'll just read this out loud, and I'll email all of you later. How's that?
Most trustees do have their computers. I
Okay.
just don't have mine because I was rushing. But.
Well, so if you're on our agenda, you'll need to click on the link to see the draft version of the policy instead of the actual policy if it is an existing policy. Looking at 3110, there have been some suggestions recommended and approved by legal. I'm looking at the first section, school district media. I'm going to read the last paragraph. As the official spokesperson, the superintendent or his or her designee shall issue all news releases concerning the district. All statements of the board will be released through the office of the superintendent and/or the district clerk. I just want to be sure that the board and the board president is aware of that, to make sure we are in agreement with that wording. The next section, municipal governments, the first sentence says, the board will establish and maintain a positive working relationship with various governing bodies. I would suggest that we change that to be the district will establish and maintain a positive working relationship, because sometimes those relationships are formed by various people.
So true. And did we talk about this in the policy?
No, because we were highly focused on wellness, so we didn't go through these in detail. We just said that these will be presented to the board.
But didn't I bring up this, was it one not to you, to somebody, about the fact that the board could have a separate statement from the district? Who did I say that to?
We've discussed it, it wasn't in committee.
Okay, well, let's talk about it now. So that last statement there, the official spokesperson, the superintendent, and his or her designee shall issue all news releases concerning the district. All statements from the board will be released through the office of the superintendent or the district clerk, which is different than what happens now, which is, depending on who the board president is, that person may release news releases or statements or whatever. It doesn't come from the district clerk's office, but it can. So what's your pleasure? Thank you for, so maybe because we talked about it, you brought it up, but thank you for bringing that up. Does anyone have any feedback, concern, question, comment? Trustee Pineda.
I think the way it reads right now with the changes, with the revisions, makes sense to me, because ultimately the community can get accustomed to seeing the messages come from the superintendent's office or the district clerk, as opposed to this year it's President X, next year it's President Y. That could be a little confusing if someone's not paying attention. So I think it helps have a more consistent messaging. So I think it makes sense the way it is now.
Okay. Any other trustees? Questions, concerns, comments? So I actually think, I mean, that could be kind of difficult. I don't know if we've ever released anything from the district clerk's office. I don't know if anyone, I look at you, Trustee Warner. I look at you, Trustee Valen,
FOIL
because you've been
requests.
around. But, huh?
FOIL requests.
Yeah, FOIL requests are really the only thing that come out of the district clerk's office. I look at you, Trustee Valen, because I know you've been around as a public person paying attention as well. If there's anything that the district clerk releases. I mean, very often the president's messaging gets updated by the district clerk. You know, I used to send things or include, I know with me, I can speak, but I don't know about Trustee Warner, who's been in the president's role. It just seems like a strange action. But Trustee Pineda?
I just want to point out that just because we've done it one way doesn't mean we need to continue doing it that way. I think that in order for it to be consistent and clear, we could have it come from the district clerk, because in every instance I can think of, the board president is fielding a lot of the information through the district clerk, and the district clerk is helping coordinate a lot of those pieces. It might make sense to do that moving forward. So I think we could come up with some kind of process for that to happen. But I think, at least in my brain, I might be off base here. I think it would make a lot of sense to do that.
Yeah, I'm not sure. So what does everybody, I hear there's silence from other people. I don't know if you guys, I mean, I've learned a lot about the role this year, but I don't know how things have been done before, how things from the public point of view look, that would make sense or not. I don't know. Everyone chime in.
Perhaps it's a question of not just distribution, but creation. So distribution of a message would come from the district clerk, but that doesn't necessarily mean that the creation of that message comes from her. So I like the idea of consistency as opposed to name changes, especially in electronic communications, and things change.
Yeah, I don't know. We don't really send out messages. Trustee Valen?
So I'm just wondering, when this says all statements of the board, so that sounds like, you know, a declaration. I'm wondering, does that sounds like it doesn't necessarily apply to inquiries directed to the board president directly? Would it? That's where I'm having a little bit of trouble deciding how those replies to the direct queries would be handled with this policy. Statement is different than, so sorry, I'm just throwing more fuel under the fire.
So somebody sends you an email. And you right now say, thank you very much, we will consider what's going on, and thank you for your input. And now we're going to, they're going to send you an email, and you're going to have to forward it to the district clerk and have the district clerk say, thank you very much for your input. Is that what we're saying?
I don't know.
Or is this just about the press?
I don't know. Trustee Pineda.
That's not what I'm saying, because that's not how I read it. The way I read it is actually along the lines of what Trustee Valen was saying, is how I interpreted this, which is news releases concerning the district. In that case, if the board needs to release a statement, which doesn't happen often, but if we needed to, my thought process seeing this would be, hey, it would be nice to be consistent so that if there's something that needs to go to a news media outlet, it comes from the board president creating the messaging and all that, but it's being sent via the conduit of the district clerk to that agency. And then that also helps in another way, that in the future, when that agency wants to reach out, it's no longer to board president X, who may no longer be here, or now it's board president Y. It's to the district clerk, which is our official office, and it just ensures that consistency. So that's what I was thinking when I said that. I wasn't talking about responses to general emails or anything like that.
I was confused. So I
if
guess
the person sending you the email is a reporter, then you refer them back to the district clerk
In my thought process, it would be if the person is a reporter, it's going to get fielded to the president anyways, because that's the board president's responsibility to
Right.
aggregate and put the messaging together from the board as a whole. But it would ultimately come from the district clerk back to the reporter. That's how I see this working out.
So that makes sense, but I guess, is this I mean, it's in red, so it's a change, but I get, like, this is a little strange for me, because I know in my role, I've done releases. It went through our clerk at the time, was Ivy. It went to the clerk, and then the message comes from, like, the Board of Education. It's an email that, I didn't send that email, the clerk sent that email, so yeah, but that's what we always do, so I'm not sure why it's a change. But, okay, well, let's keep going then. And no one really objects to that, right?
I'm just not able to process in any way, shape, or form to see that this is a better thing or a worse thing.
Yeah.
It's just a
confused
thing.
by
It seems to add an extra step to the process, so I would say no, but not a strong no.
I actually see where it actually was going, though. Like, I like, what, the idea that, I mean, it's not like we get a deluge of reporters, though. So, I mean, on that case,
Right,
we can
right.
kind of keep it the same. But I would say that it probably is best practice to have that flow. But again, every time I say it, once again, if they wind up reaching out to you anyway,
Yeah, it's
then
kind
they're
of-
going to continue to do that.
Okay, so we leave it? Okay, we're leaving it. And what's the next part? I'm sorry, Trustee Valen, what was the next part you brought attention to?
The
bless
next
you.
paragraph just says the board will establish
you.
relationships, and I think that should say the district will establish
Oh,
relationships.
instead of the board, okay. Does anybody object to that? Could we say board and district?
Doesn't the district encompass the board as well as administration?
Well, sometimes.
Oh,
I mean, it depends on who you're talking to.
Going once?
I'm for that.
Okay, so everyone's fine with district. I don't hear any objection. Okay, so is somebody writing down those changes? Okay, great. Anything else on that policy 3110? Is that 3110? Okay. And then the next policy we have here, it is 3111, community involvement. So, yeah, I was looking at this actually, because I wanted to, does our CEC committee reference this policy in your purpose and mission? Yeah. So I don't know, I mean, I think the CEC is a committee. I don't know that it's a program. So do we, I mean, I like this a lot. I think we should support all community partners personally, but I don't know, how everyone feels about it. All right. Hearing none.
Well, isn't there
Yes.
a weekly meeting that the superintendent gets together with a team and puts out a release every week? Isn't that happening now?
To the community?
No, that's just my own communication, internal committee that I meet with internally with staff.
So is the team that would execute what's in this policy the same team? To this end, the superintendent of schools, with the Board of Education approval, is authorized to establish, through the use of various media, a community relations program which will keep the Board of Education in touch with public opinion in relation to the schools and school policy, and encourage citizens to become involved in school affairs and to share their opinions and ideas with the Board of Education. So that sounds like a two-way communication process. So there's going to be two pieces, some messages going out to the community and input coming back to the school district and the board from the community.
And some pieces that we are doing that, yes, internally. the committee, my communication has involved a lot of that.
Trustee Valen?
I have a couple thoughts. I'll just stick right now with the one, and I just want to point out if for those who may not have read the background information, that this is not an Erie one, a policy derived from Erie One BOCES. This is one apparently that the district created for themselves, so we can kind of make it what we want. When I read this, I read that program as basically being the Community Engagement Communications Committee as the means through which to get that involvement. If we were to decide to keep this policy or change the policy, I do have thoughts on that, but I will keep them silent for now.
Trustee Thomas?
So where does, like, you know, my communication, when I send out an email just from an email list, should that be fit in this policy somehow? Like, am I, what did you say? Yes, it should be. Does that fit in the policy somehow, the communications that we have directly with our committees?
So that's from the board, but this says that the superintendent of schools, with the board's approval, is authorized to establish a community relations program which keeps the Board of Education in touch with public opinion. I mean, when I think of that, so everybody has their own thought of what that means, right? So when I think of that, it makes me wonder if the CEC has this embedded as part of their mission. Plus, there's some sort of programmatic thing similar to like a superintendent's tea that happens where you bring everyone together, where you get feedback on what's going on, some sort of community event that happens periodically where you obtain that information. That's where my brain goes, but everyone's going to see it differently. Trustee Washington?
Right, because CEC committee is not a part of this at all. This is something that the superintendent says, I have this great idea, I want to do this program with the Greenberg Police Department, and I'm bringing it to the board for approval. Program, the word program means it happens, it could be ongoing, it could be annual, but it's the superintendent's idea on how to connect with the community, and we have to give approval on that. CEC, this is not part of that. He has that committee, and this is when the superintendent wants to do something when it comes to the community, and then also to relay information when she hears some concerns and some statistics that are out there, and then she brings that information back.
Trustee Pineda?
Could I make a suggestion that we modify this policy to read, to take into account the CEC and its current purpose as being the conduit for that two-way communication between the board and the community, and then separately have it still reference the fact that the superintendent of schools, with the Board of Education's approval, is already engaging the community via the weekly messages and that communication messaging program she has already in place. I think if we can reword this so it captures both of those, we kind of get to the same goal while of making sure that we have that two-way communication with the community, both to the board but to the district as well.
I like that, definitely. And there's also, I mean, there was emails about possibly, you know, participation in WISE. So WISE, for example, is something where we could definitely get community members involved and have community involvement even in our students' education. We have a Woodlands High School Scholarship Fund. That's another way in which we have community members who raise funds for our students to get monies to actually go to college and or to supplement children going to college. So those are two things that we have right here in our district that does involve the community, that is open to community involvement. So maybe we do need to really kind of flesh this thing out a little bit more. Trustee Valen?
A couple of things. This is a policy. We can change the wording however we want because it is our policy. I would probably caution against getting hyper-specific because what we do in one year, we may choose not to do in another year. I think if I'm just looking at one word to change, I'm going to change program to outreach. that could encompass a lot of ways to do that. So my question is, if we do want to look at changing this policy, do we want to designate a committee to begin that work specifically and come back to the board with other suggestions, or do we want to just hash it out as a board group? And the last thing I want to say that I held off on earlier is there is that required committee shared decision-making, which really isn't embedded in our policies anywhere, and I don't know if we should embed it or if this is a place to mention it. Food for thought.
What was that again?
The last
The
part you
shared
just said.
decision-making is a mandate that we have, a group that does shared decision-making.
Okay, so, do you want to answer, anybody to answer that first before I go on? Okay.
Trustee Washington.
So I don't really understand why the specifics of the different programs and the committee needs to be put in the policy, because this policy states that we believe that there must be a planned, comprehensive, year-round community relations program. So that's already our belief. So now it's stating that we already believe you should be doing something as a superintendent when it comes to our community programs. So why do we need to? So I'm just trying to get the understanding why WISE needs to come in and why, this is basically saying what our belief as a governing body, and to add CEC, I don't know if you want to do another policy with that, but this is just basically saying our belief, and that
You want to leave it as is, you're
well,
saying?
I don't, unless you want another policy.
And so I can answer about the specifics. I'm sorry, it's not my computer, but, so I know we also have a policy specific to the PTA, for example. So that's a specific, I think it's 3250, Chris, you can pull it up and probably get the number, or maybe 3150. But we have specifics in other policies, so that's why I was just trying to give an example to give specifics. But, yeah, maybe we could leave it the same. Maybe we should pull it and kind of, I'm going to possibly suggest pull it and have the governance and policy kind of debate over it a little bit more, and then bring it back to the board. I don't know how people feel about that. Trustee Pineda?
You took the words right out of my mouth. But I was also going to just state that the reason I was asking to consider the suggestion of being more specific with it was because when I view policy documents, I think of my first year on the board, for example, where I just started going through policies and trying to understand how things work and why they work the way they work. And when I would find a policy, something like this, that was very vague, that didn't help my understanding. So in my thought process, it's, yeah, we can make changes every year and we can always adjust the policies, but it would be nice if we didn't have to be hyper specific, but put some clarity to it so that we set the foundation and the building blocks so that future boards that may be mostly new memberships or whatever the story may be, whatever the mix is, would not have to kind of redo that whole thing again. They would have at least a plan in place, and then should they decide they want to at that point modify it, well, then they can adjust the policy, but at least they had some lay of the land. So that was my thought process for that.
Trustee Thomas, I feel like I saw you first earlier, and then Trustee Warner.
Yeah, I would just say quickly, when you guys have that meeting, I suppose I could see some reasons why it would fit in the policy, just in terms of creating like seamless communication, so that there's just a consistent message on a consistent cadence. So if there are things that need to be communicated, from actually, what does everybody else do in terms of FinFac and government? Everybody has their own.
There are policies. So right, you're saying exactly what I was going to say. Look for parallel structure. Go figure out what policies correspond to other committees and see what they do, because that seems to be helpful both in giving direction to the committee and in letting people know what's going on. So, who's the administrative liaison to the CECC? The superintendent, right? What's the thing here? The primary responsibility is the superintendent. This is a way that the CEC is a way that the superintendent is achieving this objective. So, yes, you can change the language to make it more specific. Look for parallel structure with other committees.
Okay. Trustee Valen?
Sorry, and just in the interest of getting additional data, I believe the CEC meets next week. Could I ask, as Chair of the Governance and Policy Committee, that you possibly just bring this up and just for discussion at your committee meeting and give us some of the feedback you receive, just as another data point?
Sure.
Thank you.
Okay, next on the agenda is diversity, equity, and inclusion in the district, policy number 3440. You have so many things. Okay, this is a large policy, which is great. Does anybody have any questions, concerns, comments, feedback? Trustee Valen, thank you. 6
Sorry.
pages.
Just a few things on page, okay, how are you guys looking at it? Page 4 of 6.
Bring my stuff.
Let me go to see what you're looking at.
You have that from the committee?
I printed it today for myself because I think better with a catalog.
Yeah, I need paper. I have to have it.
So I think it's page 4 of 6.
Okay.
Under DEI coordinator, and of course now my computer can't open it up. So is everyone there? It says the district will employ a DEI coordinator who will be a member of the DEI committee, blah, blah, blah. I would like to suggest we change that word to appoint, which can encompass employ and/or appoint an existing employee.
Are you concerned that it's, the way it's written is to designate a hire?
Correct.
As opposed to,
So if you state appoint, does that eliminate someone getting a stipend?
In my mind, no.
What'd you say?
I'm not in charge of that. In my mind, it does not.
Okay.
okay, so it's 6 pages. I think folks have to look at it. We don't have it here, so everyone has it on their computer screen. I don't know if they can read 6 pages that fast.
I like the fact that letter A says implement a culturally responsive, sustaining education framework. So I'm just saying that's in there, so that's good.
So next policies, number 5551, allocation of Title I, Part A funds in the district. Any questions or concerns about this policy?
That gives a chance to bring it up.
It is
I got it.
2 pages, 1 page. Trustee Valen?
I'm sorry, are you on 5551? Okay, the allocation methodology, I don't know, I mean, the tense is weird to me. I don't know if it should be instead of has developed an allocation methodology or shall develop, will develop. I
Well,
don't even know.
administration looked at this already.
Okay, then it's fine. All right.
Okay. And then next, another one, sorry?
No, I need to go back to the DEI
Okay,
policy
DEI.
because it's a long page and I forgot. I
Sorry,
didn't
it's
see the other.
3440.
At the very end of the policy, under policy notification, says this policy will be posted on the district's website, and then it lists a bunch of other places. Again, this is a policy we can tailor to our district. The last sentence says the district will share information about this policy via the district website and/or district-wide communications as appropriate. I don't know if I agree with, in the sentence prior to that, also listing the will also be published in student registration materials, student, parent, and employee handbooks, and other appropriate school publications. I do think I don't know if we want to spell all of those out. I do think we should be publishing it in some of those places, but I'd like to hear what other
What's your
people think
concern,
about that.
Trustee Valen?
My concern is publish in student registration materials. Do we even publish things like that?
Yeah, that's student privacy.
Right.
Right.
So what do you mean student public?
It says this policy will be posted on the district's website and will also be published in student registration
So, like,
materials.
when you
I don't
register
know what
your
that means.
child for school, haven't done that in a while, but
So
I'm
it's gonna be
assuming
part of our-
it would be it would be listed
Part
in
of
the
the packet.
packet.
Okay.
Oh, okay.
Diversity, inclusion, equity.
Okay, all right,
That should be in our code of conduct type, right?
okay. So the handbooks and then other appropriate school, okay, I'm good with that. And then the board will annually review the district's implementation of this policy and take appropriate action to ensure compliance with and enforcement of this policy. I guess my question actually has to do with the how, which shouldn't really be addressed in the policy, so I withdraw this comment.
Trustee Pineda, you look like you're moving.
No, I was just gonna give the context in my brain of how we would do that, but which would just be evidence of the actual documents, right? But that's okay. We could keep going.
Trustee Washington,
I
you're
just have
moving.
something to say about the Title I, where it's listed, provided to students in district school buildings that receive Title I Part A funds in order to serve. So we have the homeless children, then migrant, and then English learners, language learners, is that, E&L? That what we're talking about?
English is new learners?
No. I'm just wondering, because English language learners, isn't that under Title III?
Oh, I don't know all the titles by heart.
So, and then if we're going to specify English language learners, which, are we going to also specify special education?
The Title I, 5551.
Yeah, I just want to make sure we're not missing, because English language learners, I thought were under Title III.
Which part? I'm sorry, Trustee Washington.
Allocations of funds. Everybody else see it?
So
Okay.
just to clarify, your question is letter D, English learners, whether that's part of Title I or not? Was that your question?
Right.
Okay.
Should it specify as Title III? Should it be, or is it okay under Title I? And then, since we specify English language learners, should we also specify special education? That was a question.
We'll look at that. And so so this is going back to administration. 555, you got that, Trustee Valen? 5551's going back to admin. So we should see that come back through the committee. And then 3111's going to the committee. Okay, next we have 5633, gender-neutral single occupancy bathrooms. Any questions, comments, concerns about this policy? One pager, yes. I had a question about this. You sure we didn't talk about this at our meeting? I feel like I made comments about this too. Trustee Pineda?
So the only question I have is, how are we going to ensure that we can physically achieve this in each building? The way it reads here is essentially one bathroom will be designated gender neutral, and it's going to be near the entry door of each facility or have some signage around that. Do we physically have our bathroom facilities set up in each building where we can achieve that is my question. I think we do, but
Isn't there one by the gym?
Sorry, I didn't catch the
Well,
last part of the,
wasn't
sorry.
He said,
So-
do we have that available?
Right.
Every building.
We discussed, sorry, Tracy, I'm sorry.
Trustee Valen, go ahead.
Sorry, Tracy, you were asking if we had discussed this previously, and we discussed the how, the implementation, which again, doesn't necessarily apply to the policy itself unless it drives how we write the policy. So I think when we had the discussion that we identified at least one bathroom in each building that could be single gender, but we were working off of our memories and we did not visit the buildings. I'm sure we could reach out to our administrative team.
yeah, because the policy says near the entry door of each facility. So that
No, it says that has a door for entry, not necessarily near. Okay, I got you.
so we could just clear that
Gotcha.
up, and I think we'll be in a better place.
I think the signage needs to be near the door of entry, not the bathroom itself. Directing the person to where to go.
So yeah, if we could just iron that out.
Okay, so that goes back to committee as well. And then students with life-threatening health conditions. 7521, and there was a question about the recent Narcan language. Did Carol get a chance to look at that? Yes? Okay, wonderful. Trustee Valen?
I have no questions about the policy per se, but I will request that at the next board meeting, instead of waiting the 30 days, that we have a second resolution to take immediate action on implementing this policy 7521 as amended. So that will be my request for leadership to consider action so that we can implement that as soon as possible. Thank you.
Yes, Carol? Suspend the policy for this one policy is your request.
So we'll need
that-
two resolutions, one to suspend policy 1410, I think, and the other two for this resolution to, unless there's an objection by the,
No one's
Board
objecting?
for this.
Okay, let's move on. All right, guys, so it's 8:40. We do. It's 8:40 now. We have committee reports. Are there any reports of any committees of the board? Yes, Trustee Thomas?
The Community Engagement Committee and the Community Engagement and Communications Committee met on January 14th at 11 a.m. via Zoom. The attendees were Linda Iverson, Samantha Ives, David Warner, Emily Dowie, Lloyd Court, Johan Snaggs, Giovanna Mateus, and myself. We first adopted our January 14th, 23 meeting minutes. We had some updates from the superintendent around the policies that we just discussed. We got an update on Highview United Way and after school enrichment update. After that, David discussed the energy performance contract, which has since passed, and shared some MLK quotes on educations and how similar they were to some of the areas of our strategic plan and portraits of a graduate. Dr. Iverson brought up the idea of working with students to illustrate the portraits of a graduate, which we brought up tonight as well. It was expressed that the strategic plan should include encouraging students to give back to the community later in life. Perhaps that's something that will come up in our next conversation. Discuss process for amending the strategic plan. We made a mention of the WISE kickoff, which was held on February 3rd, where alumni came out to communicate how the incredible opportunity that WISE was for them. And we talked through some sophomores and juniors to set the table for the program next year. There was a mention of potentially working with students to do some of the storytelling process around WISE to increase engagement, as well as getting more parents involved with the program. I noted that Greenburgh was noted as one of the top 10 places to live in the Northeast via, I forgot who did, Money Magazine. And introduced the Harlem Wizards game, which turned out to be a fun event that I played terribly in. The library has a Black History Month series going on, and if students are looking for volunteer opportunities, they can go to the library's website, and we just discussed highlighting more success stories in the town of Greenburgh.
Wonderful. Any questions, comments, concerns about the CEC meeting?
I
Trustee
would
Warner's
say that the
moving.
Harlem Wizards went easy on a lot of the other teachers, but not on you.
It was wonderful. Hearing none, thank you for your report. Trustee Thomas, when is the next CEC committee meeting?
Always forget that. The next meeting is next Monday, February 13th at 7 p.m. via Zoom. All are welcome.
Thank you. Any more committees reports?
I'll
Trustee-
report, no, just
Trustee Pineda?
All right. I have two reports, but I'm only going to give one because they're both from the same committee. So I'll give the December 7th committee report for the Safety and Technology Committee, and then at our next meeting, in the interest of time, I'll give the next report. So the Safety and Technology Committee met on Wednesday, December 7th. We called the meeting to order at 5:10 p.m. This was an expedited meeting because that was the same day as the winter concert, so we wanted to make sure we made it out in time. In attendance were David Leese, Lisa Raymond, Dr. Christopher Macaluso, Ashley Pineda, Chris Valen, and David Warner. During open session, we adopted our previous meeting minutes. We had a brief conversation on committee charges. follow-up to come in the next meeting minutes. We talked about safety, and Mr. Pugliese was looking into potential vape detectors. We talked about radios, an inventory of radios being requested from the principals and directors for future project purposes. We talked about cell repeaters that could be deployed on our campus to cover all service providers to help with the issue of cellular coverage in our schools and the proximate cost for that. Ms. Raymond met with Mr. Smith and Mr. Santos at that point in time to talk about hiring potentially an additional 3 security staff. And we had an update on the security vestibule at that point in time. The contractor was still waiting for the materials to begin the project. We then had a conversation on technology, an update on the website. The plan at that point in time was going with a particular vendor that we were moving forward with. We hit a roadblock on the finalized contract language, so that went away, and we're going to update the board and the community on that in a future meeting. We also got an update at that point in time that our current website service provider had just been purchased by another company called Final Site, and there could be some potential features and feasibility there. We had an update on the one-to-one device program in terms of staffing for the program. So there was a new educational technology specialist that was going to be concentrating on the asset management system for tracking those devices, for figuring out, okay, this device is assigned to which student, etc. There also was an update that at that point in time, an additional order of 125 Chromebook devices was placed via the CRISA-related funds to help supplement this year's fleet and any existing issues that were out there. And then Mr. Lease gave us a quick update on Tech This Out activities that happened during that point in time. Specifically, Computer Science Week was being held during that week, and we had examples of how the Computer Science Week was celebrated in some of our school buildings. For example, at Lee F. Jackson, the middle school visited and middle school students provided reading and literacy, problem solving, and coding to the Lee F. Jackson students. So having a little bit of a relationship there between the students sharing information. At R.J. Bailey, there was a paper tower challenge that was occurring during that week, and the students were using the GCSD design process to build the tallest tower out of paper, and then ranking those towers. And obviously the tower would fall apart, and then they'd start their design process again, come up with a new design, and then keep building. And then at the high school, there was a virtual session arranged with the principal science engineer at Amazon, and students were able to engage in the conversation with the engineer at Amazon and see how computer science is present in our everyday lives. The open session portion of that meeting closed at 5:32 p.m. We then went into closed session at 5:33 p.m. We stayed in closed session talking about safety and security related topics until 6:38 p.m. and then we adjourned the meeting at 6:38 p.m.
Thank you, Trustee Pineda. Any questions, comments, concerns? Hearing none, when's the next Safety and Technology Committee meeting?
The next Safety and Technology Committee meeting is on March 29th, 5:30 p.m. to 8:30 p.m. at the Woodlands Middle High School Innovation Lab, and it will be broadcast live via YouTube as it always is.
Awesome. Any other committee reports? Trustee Valen?
The Governance and Policy Committee met on January 30th at 4 p.m. in the Woodlands Middle High School Innovation Lab. We spent all of the time reviewing Policy 5661 on wellness, and that has been passed through the superintendent to the assistant superintendent of business to review with the Nutrition Committee. We next meet this coming Monday, February 13th at 4 p.m., ending at 5:30 in the Innovation Lab. Thank you.
I forgot about that Monday meeting. Thank you for the reminder. Is there any other questions, concerns, or comments?
No question or concern, but we have the Education and Wellness meeting this Thursday, February 9th, and we're going to have it at Highview, correct?
No, they have a talent show.
I know,
that
but we
day.
thought we would have it there first and then go to the talent show.
Oh, that's a great idea, too.
I mean, Dr. Macaluso thought of it. What happened? We going to change it now?
We'll look into that. Trustee
Right, we
Walker.
said we would just maybe meet, and then everybody could just go right to the talent show.
That's such a good idea.
It is.
See,
Yes.
you thought of it. Did you forget?
He's smiling. Trustee Warner?
The next meeting of the Finance and Facilities Committee is Thursday, February 16th at 6:30 p.m.
Thank you. So EWC
What
is
happened?
to be determined, the location. Is that fair, or, okay?
No, Trustee Valen, wanted to say something?
6:30.
6:30.
6:30 EWC, Education and Wellness Committee, 6:30.
And we'll send out a blast or something where.
Sure, correct.
Okay. Finance and Facilities, 2:16 at 7. Trustee Werner?
6:30.
Thank you for clarifying. 6:30. Trustee Along?
Governmental Relations will be meeting on 1 o'clock this Friday. Location to be determined. Chrissy, I'll connect with you. We need a room at Woodlands.
1 o'clock on Friday. Who
At
were
1
you talking
o'clock
to that you need a room?
Thursday.
Christine? Oh,
I need a room.
that's for Dr.
reserved.
Iverson.
Oh,
She will get you a room.
yes.
What's a different thing?
The governmental,
So
the ad
governmental
hoc
relations, who is
committee.
isn't that, the liaison is Dr. Iverson, correct? Yeah, so Dr. Iverson's going to get you a room, not Christine. And are you aware of the 1 o'clock meeting? Did you
No.
guys coordinate it with Ivy?
We did not.
Okay.
I will
Make sure she's
roll back around.
Dr. Iverson's like, really?
Sorry to surprise you, Dr. Iverson.
Okay, so double check, but right now it's on Friday at 1.
Oh, Friday, not Thursday.
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 I'm sorry about that. I was
thought you
pushing
said
you to
Friday,
Friday.
too. Yeah, I thought you said
Thursday.
Friday.
Thursday at 1.
Okay.
So you'll check with her secretary. Okay. Any other committee reports? Anything? Okay. Trustees, we do have some people here to meet with us in executive session. It's further down on our agenda, but time is now 8:51. There's a request to possibly stop public session at this time and go into executive session and hear from these folks, and then come back out into executive session, but I don't want to make
else
that
do we have
decision.
to
I want to
do?
hear from you all. What's your
What
pleasure?
else do we need to do for public?
Public is superintendent, board president, assistant superintendent reports, and public comments, which we have none at all.
So do we think that's going to take more than 10 minutes?
Well, what's your pleasure? Do you want to keep going?
I'm
Sounds like
just,
you wanna
if we
keep
could just
going.
do 10 minutes with the, with
Okay,
superintendent.
so let's keep
and-
going. Okay. All right, Dr. Iverson.
And I will be quick. I only have 3 very brief announcements in the essence of time. And as we've discussed a lot around diversity, equity, and inclusion tonight, I certainly want to say that the district continually celebrates diversity throughout our district as we prioritize it in teaching students about different cultures. So we certainly want to recognize this month as February marks the start of Black History Month, and our schools will be holding and have been holding assemblies, creating art projects, reading books, and hearing music by Black authors and composers, and learning about the numerous and broad contributions of African Americans in our society. We look forward to sharing these examples with our community throughout the month, and I'm asking the public to watch our website and look at our social media platforms of some of the great talent in our district of our students. I certainly want to thank our administration, faculty, and staff for all of their work, coordinating all of these assemblies, and of course our students for their participation, receptivity, and willingness to be active learners. My second announcement, and I'm sure Ms. Raymond will talk more about this, is just to remind the public that we are well into the planning of the budget for the 2023-2024 school year. At this time, Dr. Macaluso, Ms. Raymond, and I are in the process of meeting with district administrators, principals, and department heads to understand their needs and their requests. The budget will also help fund and support many of the things we're discussing here in our strategic plan tonight. And the first budget presentation will be next Tuesday. I'm sure Ms. Raymond will talk more about that. Excuse me, and my last announcement is just to remind our parents that we still will be sending home COVID tests with your child right before the February vacation, starting Monday, February 20th, and students will then return through the 24th. Students return that following Monday. So look for those tests in the backpacks very quickly. Thank you.
Thank you, Trustee. Thank you, Dr. Iverson. Are there any questions, concerns, comments? I did want to ask about, you said there's Black History Month celebrations. Can you let us know, I'm sure you don't have it at the top of your head, but for what every school building and program from ECP through the high school is doing in this Friday's packet, when, what each school, so that we can attend if desired, and or participate, but could know that on each level what people are actually doing concretely. Okay, any other questions, concerns, comments? No? Okay, board president's report. I just wanted to also acknowledge Black History Month. I also wanted to acknowledge the social and emotional health of our staff members and mental health. I know that it's easy to expect a lot as a parent, but that people also are people, and the people that work with our little children or big children also need to be socially and emotionally healthy. So just to keep that in mind as well, and appreciating the folks that work with our children on all levels and in all areas of engagement. I will skip the rest of the things I was going to say to essence of time, and we'll move on to the Assistant Superintendent of Curriculum, Instruction, and Personnel, Dr. Macaluso.
Good evening again, everyone. A couple of announcements or a couple of updates from Curriculum and Instruction. First and foremost, I want to just piggyback off of Trustee Washington's announcement. EWC meeting will again be this Thursday, starting at 6:30, where we plan to provide a high-level overview for our parents as it relates to the course selection process for our students in Woodlands Middle High School. So please be on the lookout for the notification that will give you the confirmation of the location for that. We did just complete another Parent University workshop this past February 7th regarding our Writing Revolution program, which is the writing program that we have in our schools K-12. If you were not able to attend that event, later on in the week, the video will be posted on our Parent U website under the tab for TWR. Again, then that's the Writing Revolution. The next upcoming Parent University session is on March 6th, and that is virtual, and it is Understanding Your Child's IEP, sponsored by the FACE Center. I want to give a quick couple of shout-outs to the athletics department and all their efforts to continue to expand our program and strengthen it. First and foremost, our boys and girls bowling teams will be competing in sectionals next week, with the boys participating on Monday the 13th and girls participating on Tuesday the 14th. I'd also like to give a shout out to the boys swim team that placed third in the divisional championship, and this is a great accomplishment for our district, especially since we had a swimming team that was approximately 3 students 4 years ago, and now that's grown to 20 students. So congratulations to the boys swim team. And finally, I want to also shout out the fencing team that placed first in the league championship the first time in our school history. So congratulations to the athletics department and all those teams, their coaches, and their athletes for all their fine work. The technology department recently took inventory of approximately 125 Chromebooks. So again, with our commitment to one-to-one devices, those have been distributed to our students based on the priority needs of new students who are new to the district, students who just had a device that was no longer operational. I want to remind parents that if you still continue to have needs with your child's one-to-one device, there is a tab under the parent portal of our website where parents can fill out a form that will be sent to the technology department to assist you with your needs. And again, that's in the parent tab under parent/student support form. And the last piece, I wanted to give the community an update on the Seal of Civic Readiness. In one of our previous meetings, I had announced that the district was pursuing that option for our students in addition to the Seal of Biliteracy. We recently completed a review of our program through the help of some of our BOCES partners and some projects that we had initially thought that were part of the IB program that would be able to satisfy some of the requirements for that don't exactly satisfy it. So we're going to have to suspend that part of college and career readiness indicator for next year, and we will go ahead and look at some of our IB projects that the students complete and how we can tweak those projects so that they can also satisfy the requirements of the Seal of Civic Readiness. And that is it for the ASCIP report.
Thank you, Dr. Macaluso. Any questions, concerns, comments? I have some questions. So just because I've gotten some feedback on this, and I know we've spoken briefly about substitute teachers. So, and I guess for you, for Dr. Iverson, when we are missing or down for teachers, we try to hire substitutes. I'll explain what I know. In the middle high school, we may utilize existing teachers to cover, one teacher may take one period, another teacher may take another period, and you may see that reflected on our board minutes where we hire certain teachers to cover particular classes. What's another way? Do we have substitutes that like we pull from to come into the school? And that's with secondary. With primary, pre-K through 6, here, how do we cover substitutes? What is that process? When do we start looking for substitutes? Sometimes we have expected leaves, like sometimes if someone's going on maternity or paternity leave, or if they know of some sort of thing that they're having. How is that addressed? Because it's been asked personally by me a lot of times, to me, but also I think the public needs to know how are we covering classes. Also at ECP, there's been times that we've had a shortage in with TAs or whatever. A parent came here, I think, one time to address us about that. So if we could just touch on that again, that'd be helpful.
So we have a number of things in place that we are using to cover classes. So first and foremost, yes, at the high school, teachers can pick up a section. We've also had teachers accept a section pretty much full-time if we know that we have a teacher who will be out for a longer period of time. And for the most part, those extended absences in the secondary Woodlands Middle High School are covered. We do have teaching assistants who also have a teaching certification who cover for us. We also have some other pieces in place that we've implemented through support of the GTF, whereby teachers at all grade levels can cover a class for some additional compensation by giving up their preparation period voluntarily. And then, Ms. Raymond, the name of the organization that we're trying to partner with, there's an organization that we're trying to partner with that would also potentially provide us with a backup or a bench of substitute teachers. And then last and certainly not least, we have our building principals who actively recruit from their existing current retirees who consistently come back to the schools and cover for absent teachers. And that's in all of our schools, I know of that happening. Lastly,
How soon do we start looking for teachers? So if we know someone's going to be out for a surgery, for a maternity, paternity leave, is it at that time we start looking, or do we wait until like the month of, or when the person's actually out? Like, timeline?
Sure. As soon as we receive notification from the faculty in writing that they will be pursuing a leave, we recruit for that. We do have some faculty members that proactively let us know. And in those situations, we do recruit ahead of time, but that's not a requirement. So if somebody is anticipating that they will be out in April due to some sort of a procedure, they might let us know. And let's say now in February, we would actively recruit for that. But that's not always the case.
It's an anticipated
Correct.
hire.
Correct.
Okay. Any other questions, concerns, comments about that? Trustee Valen?
Not about that, but returning to the Seal of Civic Readiness.
I knew you had a question about that.
I haven't read the requirements, but I don't know if, you mentioned the IB portion, but I'm wondering, students do a lot of volunteer work either on their own or through their religious organizations, or even through clubs in school, the Key Club, Builders Club, various methods through school. I'm wondering if that would also meet part of the requirements, that maybe that's something else to look into.
I can answer that right now. Actually, it does, but in order to document that, and we have to acknowledge, right, this is a state education acknowledgement that the students are receiving, so we do have to have some backup documentation. They would need to solidify that in some sort of a project, so that will take us some time. And in addition, no error on anybody's part, but there was a component of it that we believe could have counted. So there's a column A and a column B, and students must earn certain number of points from column A and a certain number from column B. And our original review of it, we thought, and I was part of that conversation, would be that some of the IB projects could count for both, because there are certain things for Seal of Civic Readiness that can count for column A and column B. Just in this situation, things were not able to be counted, and any of that outside volunteerism does need to be solidified through a project, which will require us putting a couple of moving parts in place that we felt would just, at this time, we would not be able to put that in place.
Okay. Next on our agenda is Assistant Superintendent for Business Report, Ms. Lisa Raymond.
Thank you. For the treasurer's report for December 2022, we began the month with $34,412,212.14. We had cash receipts of $2,479,072.39, and we dispersed through payroll, accounts payable, and we had due to and due from other funds of $5,336,137.67 to end the year with $31,555,146.86. We have completed all of our fire inspections in all of our buildings, and the new certificates of occupancy are now posted throughout all of the buildings. All of the air purifier units that we received from the Department of Health have been distributed to all of our buildings. And as you know, on February 5th, 2023, we had that storm this past weekend, and during a building check, it was found that the window wall at the Woodlands Middle High School, right outside of the cafeteria, suffered damage from the wind blowing off the outer covering of the building. Our in-house staff came in that same day and repaired and covered up the areas that were exposed. Also that same day in the mansion, we had a water main break in the boiler room. The boilers were flooded and needed to be serviced. Both boilers are now back up and running, and the water main has been repaired. The snack program for the after-school program has been coordinated with Aramark, and all programs now are benefiting from having an afternoon snack for those programs. Our nutrition committee will meet this Thursday, February 9th at 5 o'clock in the Innovation Lab at the Woodlands Middle High School. As Dr. Iverson said, we will be doing our first budget presentation on February 28th, where we will do an overview of the tax cap and all the information that we do know at this point, and what we are, Dr. Iverson would like to present for the next school year. The Phase 2 project that Dr. Iverson, Dr. Macaluso, and I have been charged with putting together by the Finance and Facilities Committee is in the process. I'm not sure that we will be able February 16th to do a presentation to the Finance and Facilities Committee, but we definitely will have something to present preliminarily by the March meeting. And Dr. Macaluso and I have met a couple times with our grant writer COSER representatives to go over the grants that they have taken over for us for this year and for future years. They're looking for new grants for us, and any grants that we have seen, we have asked them to look into to see if we are eligible for. I know the one that I asked them to look into was the No Kids Go Hungry grant that just came out and is due in March. So they're looking to see if we are eligible, and they will write that grant for us.
Thank you, Ms. Raymond. Any questions, comments? Trustee Valen, Trustee Washington.
Sorry, can you just clarify the after-school snack program? Is that at the elementary level now that they've begun their?
It is at Bailey, Highview, Jackson, and the middle school.
Thank you.
I have a quick question in reference to the $31 million. Are you stating that we have $31 million from now to July 1st?
Well, that is just what the balance was at year end. We still have more real property taxes to collect, state aid, and then we do, I know that we've currently done all of our health and welfare billing, so we should receive those monies. So we do receive other monies throughout the year, but we've only received half of our taxes, real property taxes.
So this will be for the 2023 year,
so when I
not
said that
school
we
year.
ended the year, we ended December
2022
with
$31 million. So
right, but we still have 6 months left.
So in our account right now, we have $31 million.
We did at the end of December. We probably have more now because we're continually collecting.
And this is for the year 2023,
Correct.
not the school year.
22-23.
Oh, so
Our school year, 22-23.
so July 1st, there will
From
be
July 1 to June 30th. This is what the balance is right now.
Okay.
Tru-
I'm finished.
Just want to make sure the board knows that Lisa did mention, Ms. Raymond did mention that we've begun to plan the vision I have with the cabinet for next year. That report will be discussed with the leadership at my leadership meeting with the president and vice president on Thursday, and will come on in a packet so that board members get an opportunity to see it prior to the presentation on Tuesday.
I'm so happy you said that, Dr. Iverson, because that was one of my questions. You were reading my notes over here? Okay. All right, thank you. So any more questions, comments, concerns? Ms. Raymond, I wanted to ask you one thing, 3 things now, not 4. Where can a parent find the building budgets? Or not just the building and program budgets. For example, if I parent A, want to know the athletic budget and what goes into that, where can they find that detail? Can they only find that detail if they come to a Finance and Facilities Committee and ask questions? Or is that available somewhere?
Well, a copy of the budget is posted on our webpage, and they could look there.
Okay, where can they find the maybe detailed budget information about buildings?
I
on the
believe there's a
website?
detailed budget on the business office website, but it's not, you'd have, each building has their own code.
Okay, so you have to know the building code. They can get that
Correct.
from your office.
Correct.
And then they can see the detail.
They could go through all those 70-something pages and find the detail.
Where-
It's not broken down by school.
Where can parents find the information on class trips and on what is funded with class trips for each building?
There is 2 lines for class trips. There's a line under transportation for the cost of the bus, and then in the 2110 section of the budget, each school has an allocation for field trips that the principals set up.
Okay, and at the Finance and Facilities Committee, this is still the second question. At the Finance and Facilities Committee, a parent mentioned that budgets are frozen because there's budgeting time going on and that no monies are allowed. You clarified that that's not true fully. If
Correct.
a building leader wants, or program leader comes to the business office, they can get the monies. That is the same for...
They still go through the same process. They put a purchase order in, it'll go through
Got it.
Dr. Macaluso's. There's stages that it goes through. So if a secretary puts in a purchase order, the principal approves it, then it goes to Dr. Macaluso. If he approves it, then it comes to me.
Wonderful.
And then I'll approve it. And/or they contact either Dr. Macaluso and I to tell us what it is that they're looking for, why they need it, and then it'll go through.
Great, thank you. And lastly, you mentioned grants. What's going on with the MBK grant? I don't know which one that is to somebody to look at. MBK grant?
The grant was submitted. We submitted the grant with the MOAs, with the partners that we needed in the community by the deadline. It's been submitted.
Can we get an update at some point? And maybe, I see Trustee Warner moving, Trustee Valen moving.
No, I'm moving in for something else.
Huh? What?
No, I'm moving in for some other topic.
Oh, okay. Can we get an update on the MBK grant process and submission dates and like when we'll learn things whenever whoever submitted it can give us an update at some point? Yes, no, maybe? Okay, great. Trustee Warner, what was your question?
I had a question from the community saying that there are art budget categories that used to be under the purview of the STEAM director before that position went away. And the question was to confirm, do the principals of the individual buildings have control over the art budget lines?
Yes.
Yes. Great, thanks.
I'm sorry. Individual principals have control over the art budget line in their building?
The STEAM.
Yes, the art budget line in their building.
So there's no, thank you for asking that. There's no uniformity with regard to curriculum within the art budget that may or may not dictate. Go ahead, Miss Dr. Macaluso. I feel like you're going to say anything because you know where my brain is going.
That's quite all right. So each individual school does have an art and music budget and as well as a STEAM budget. So schools may recommend items to me that they need from that. However, there are some things that are charged to those budgets that are uniform across the district. For example, the math instructional materials that we purchased this year will all charge to each school's STEAM account. It's an allowable expense. It's math materials. And so whenever schools need things, and then same thing for the arts, we have programs that we work through BOCES with that come through those individual budgets, but that all comes through the Curriculum and Instruction Office for approval as
Okay.
well.
Thank you very much. No more questions or concerns, comments for the business office? Next, we're on to public comments. There are no public comments today. That is a pretty quick agenda item. And now we're at executive session. It's 9:14 PM. Can I please get a motion?
I move that we adjourn to executive session to discuss the employment history of particular persons, personnel matters and/or employee records, matters deemed confidential by state or federal law, including seeking advice from counsel. And question, are we going to discuss collective bargaining tonight? And collective bargaining negotiations?
Second.
It's been properly moved in second. Any discussion? Hearing none. All those, discussion? Go ahead. Trustee
I'd just
Bell?
like to add, in matters that would endanger the safety of the public.
Thank you. Do you want to amend your motion, Trustee Warner?
I amend my motion.
Thank you. So noted. And all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries. We're now 9:15 in executive session. Thank you.
You want to be able to
Hi, it's now 11:49. We have returned to open session. And we're going to go to E, work session approvals. Can I get a motion for, what? Can I get a motion for E1, personnel instructional items?
No, F1. I move that we approve the instructional personnel items presented to the board for approval this evening as amended.
Second, we need to read the amendment, right?
It's been properly moved in second, so I'm going to read the amendment to F1. F1, as it currently stands, is going to be omitted, and the new F1 is going to say, be it resolved that as recommended by the Superintendent of Schools, the Board of Education approves the leave replacement appointment of Allison Mort in the special subject tenure area of school psychologist at a salary of $111,840, prorated, Masters 30, Step 13, effective March 10th, 2023, starting January 31st, 2024. Excuse me, effective March 10th, 2023, ending January 31st, 2024. A. Mort is certified as a school psychologist, which qualifies them to serve in the schools of New York State. Note, A. Mort shall be assigned to the Woodlands Middle High School for the 22-23 school year, replacing Kaylee Borno for the period of March 10th, 2023 through June 30th, 2023. Ms. Kaylee Borno's child care leave was approved at the February 9th, 2021 Board of Education meeting and amended at the November 2nd, 2021 Board of Education meeting, and replacing Dr. Lindsay Pycon Sharon for the period of July 1st, 2023 through January 31st, 2024. L. Pycon Sharon's child care leave was approved at the December 20th, 2022 Board of Education meeting. The said cost will be paid from the general fund. Okay, so that is the resolution. Any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries. Can I get a motion for E2, personnel non-instructional items?
I move that we approve the non-instructional personnel items presented to the board for approval this evening.
Second.
It's been properly moved and seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries. Can I get a motion for the board action items, E3?
I move that we approve the board action items presented to the board for approval this evening.
Second.
It's been properly moved and seconded.
Discussion?
Yes.
Can I ask that we have a separate vote for item number H3?
Great. So that would need to be an approved amendment. Would you like to, an amended motion? I am sleepy. Trustee Warner, would you like to amend your motion?
I will amend my motion to exclude item 3.
Okay.
H3.
Okay, so is there, we'll go for a vote now for board action items H1, H2. H3 is going to be separate. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries. Can I get a motion specifically for H3,
I
which is
move
a
we adopt
GCSO?
item H3, MOA GCSO.
Second.
It's been properly moved and second. Any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions?
Abstain.
Thank you. Motion carries. Next, we have pupil personnel services, item E4.
Yes.
Yes, thank you. Can I get a motion?
I move that we approve the pupil personnel services items presented to the board for approval this evening.
Second.
It's been properly moved and second. Any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries. Now we'll review agenda items for next meeting. J1, J2, J3, J4, J5, J6, J7, J8, J9.
Yep.
Hey, Trustee Valen?
I saw the note in the business report from the packet. I'm just wondering, can we also inquire, if these pianos are able to be repaired, is it possible they're not able to be repaired?
No, I did check into that. They have no, they're missing several keys. A lot of them don't have wheels on them. So I talked to Dennis Pugliese and had him look at them, and Lisa, and They didn't have a professional look at them because they're in such bad shape. Their keys missing on all of them,
So I'm just wondering, I mean,
and other things.
I guess I'm just wondering if we were to ever get a new piano, it's at least $4,000. So if new keys can be put on and wheels can be put on and they even be thrown in, moved to one of the buildings at the older level where kids can knock on them in the cafeteria. I'm just wondering if there's if we can get any use out of them, if repair costs would be minimal. But if repairs aren't possible, then I guess we'll move forward with this. Okay, thank you.
J10, J11, J11, J12. Yes, Trustee Valen?
Yes, I guess I was wondering, I'll probably have to send this in the packet question. The budget transfers from summer school to some of the other teaching categories. I'm just wondering, is that budgeted monies for the summer we just finished, because it's in their current fiscal year, right? So it would be for the summer 2022?
We just finished.
Okay.
Not the one we're going to.
Okay.
Well, I guess another question with that is, why do we have money left over?
Yeah, so.
I put it, you would have answered in the packet.
I'll ask in the packet, and I'm also curious if some of that money is because we had grant funding for some of the summer school salaries, so I'll include that as part of my question.
Okay, J13, I had a question about the amounts that are here, and it's for the non-resident tuition rate, and I guess.
Yeah, she checked on that. That's accurate.
Okay.
I did ask the question from my leadership meeting. Those are accurate figures.
Okay.
I know your question was why it was low.
Compared to what we pay other schools for services. Okay. J14, J15, J16, J17, J18, J19, J20. J19 or 20?
Yes, just so the board is aware, I did ask a question regarding this in the Safety and Technology Committee meeting last night. There are some dates that seem to be mismatches, or there's like 3 different references to 3 different dates. I'm just asking for follow-up on what dates are contracted and are included in this payment. This resolution states March 1st. There's a place in the document that states December 1 through December 1. There's another place that says the date of the signing of the contract. So I understand Mr. Lease is looking into that.
It's all true.
Okay, J20, J21. Moving on to closing items. New business. K1, does anyone have any new business? Trustee Pineda?
Thank you. I just wanted to make an announcement to the community. I will not be seeking re-election after this term. I want to be transparent and bring it to everyone's attention now, February 7th, almost February 8th. If you are interested in running for the school board, you have until April 17th to file with Gcsd and put in all the paperwork. I encourage you to do so. It has been an amazing opportunity for me, and I thank you for the confidence vote and allowing me to do so. But at this point, I need to take care of some personal things. But I encourage anyone who's interested to please run. It is a very rewarding experience, and you can make a great contribution. Thank you.
Thank you, Trustee Pineda. I would like to say you're going to sorely be missed. I think your voice is one that is often one of collaboration, unique, and I'm so sorry that you're going to be leaving. I'm hoping that you stay on a committee or two. I don't know how personal it is of stuff you have to deal with. I hope you're around to help us out. You know, specifically in technology, safety, I mean, every area you bring in really, really invaluable ideas and opinion. So I'm sorry that you're not running again.
Thank you for your kind words.
You will be missed.
Yes, you will. At 12 o'clock, I will miss you.
Okay, we'll have our Love Fest later. Okay, anyone else have any new business? If not, it's now 12 o'clock. Thank you, Trustee Washington. You're right on target. Can I get a motion, please?
I move that we adjourn this meeting.
It's been properly moved in second. Any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries. 12 a.m.
You did it.
Thank you.